Responses engine 5, engine 3, engine 1, ladder 3, ladder 2, rescue 1. We've got full show. Division 1, you're on location, box 23, reporting smoke show on 727.
Job Talks podcast members do not represent the cities and towns they work for in their views and opinions. They are views and opinions that belong to us only. We are not here trying to be the experts or tell people how to do their job. Our goal with this show is simply to facilitate knowledge sharing. All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Job Talks podcast. We appreciate you being here. Have a very special guest in the house today. John's going to introduce him here in a few minutes, or let him introduce himself. Before we get started, as always, please, if you're not subscribed already to our YouTube, hit that subscription button. Follow us on our social media at Job Talks, JOBTLKS. Don't forget to check out the website. We have the shirts on there. We have the bookshelf going. Check it out. Yeah, we're trying to get a little bit more going on that. And as always, interact with us.
All right. As Will said, guys, thanks for tuning back in to Job Talks. Continue to support us. Like, share, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Only takes a second and helps us out a lot.
Tremendously.
Yep, helps us out with the algorithm and all that nonsense that I don't understand.
It's in the cloud.
Yeah, it's in the cloud. What is the cloud?
I don't know, but subscribe to it, please.
Guys, so today we're going to be doing fireground tactics, specifically 2.5-story wood frame, some balloon framing in there, and all that good stuff. And as Will said, we've got the Brockton Fire Chief Brian Nardelli here. Before we get going into that, I would like to plug something very important to everyone sitting here, and especially the community in Brockton. On September 24th of this year, we have the first annual Maddie's Mustache Ride. It's going to be 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's going to start out at the Brockton High School. Kickstand's up at 10, and the run's going to be followed with a cookout at the Brockton Fire Department local. They're at their Union Hall, and it's 80 Perkins Ave, Brockton. We're going to put, I have the link here. We're going to put that up. We're going to post it to our social media. So if you guys can support that, there is a spot for donations and tickets to get into it if you have a motorcycle and you want to come ride, or if you have a classic car. You guys can get involved. Everything's going to BelieveIt.org. It's a nonprofit organization that pairs service dogs with disabled vets, and that was a cause that was near and dear to Matt's heart. So any support would be great, and that's that. So
awesome. The link will also be in the description of the video.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So, introducing the man, the myth, the legend himself. Chief Brian Nardelli of the Brockton Fire Department.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So
I wish I got that same welcome at home.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's never usually that way at home. People don't even know. Oh, Dad's home?
Yeah. Oh, great. Dad, give me something.
Yeah.
So
no, that's awesome about putting that out for
Yeah.
Matt. John, I know so many people knew and love Matt. Matt was an incredible kid. If I could real quick elaborate on that.
Oh, absolutely.
Matt was a kid that he was supposed to be in the drill school class in Brockton. We run our own drill schools, and he was supposed to be in the class before the one he was in, but he was deployed. And when he came back, we ran a class with him and two other guys that were deployed, and two other guys from a local town near there. And I was involved in his interview process and everything. And he was just that kid that everybody loved. Had him in drill school. Then I was still the training deputy at the time. He was actually put into, by no coincidence, I kind of knew what group I'd end up in a couple of years. So I kind of funneled some people some certain places. And Matt ended up in what was going to be my future group. And Matt was, he was like an uncle to my kids. I think everybody loved Matt. Everybody was friends with Matt. I think in his passing, the outpouring you saw at his services and everybody that reached out, I think none of us really realized how important Matt was to so many people. Yeah. And that was what's really important. Matt touched lives everywhere. And anyone who met him, I have a buddy. And you always say, I know, Matt, you have a buddy.
Yeah.
No, he really had a buddy.
Yeah, no bullshit.
He had a buddy everywhere. And that was what
Legitimate
was
buddy.
pretty awesome about. What was pretty awesome about Matt. So this is awesome for him and something that was so great for him. So
Yeah, going to the services they had, it was pretty obvious. There were so many people. It was raining. It was like freezing cold, and everybody was just standing out there for him, and it was awesome. I never met him myself, but heard nothing but good things.
yeah, best mustache around. Sorry,
Yeah,
John.
no, listen, I don't
John,
take any
sorry.
offense to that, man.
Yeah.
No one could compete with that thing. That
He'd
was
shave his mustache and regrow it in 48 hours.
Yeah.
My son, my youngest, is in a baseball tournament coming up, and he's growing a mustache. His teammates are growing mustaches for this tournament. And he's like, is it Matt Flaherty worthy yet? I said, nothing's Matt Flaherty.
Nothing.
It was actually funny. Probably a year ago in September, my father had a Vermont mountaintop property. It was the first time Matt was able to make it up, and me and my buddy Dave, he's a Mansfield guy. None of us had mustaches, and so we made a mustache pact. And Matt was like, dude, I'll have a full-grown mustache in 2 days. I'm going to beast on both of you. And like, it's not about that, Matt. It's about that we all have mustaches,
Yep.
So we all grew out the mustaches
That's
for
awesome.
a while,
Yeah, a little mustache envy, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That was a strong stash.
Yeah.
That was
Never to be topped.
So, well, anyways, you could talk about Matt all day. Got
Yeah.
millions of stories, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
man. Every time I talk to somebody, I
Yeah.
hear a new one. So,
Yeah.
but so let's see here. So, Chief, we have a lot of listeners. Not everyone is, it's hard pressed to find these guys who don't know who you are. But for those.
We are a
of our
worldwide
listeners.
media
Yeah.
conglomerate,
Yes.
so we have
Worldwide,
some.
yeah.
We have some people on different coasts of the
Pacific Rim might not know.
Yeah. There's two.
They
people,
should, though.
There's two people
love
in
this
Nova
place.
Scotia
I
who
love
don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm going to come here all the time. Can I be your guest next time, too?
Anytime.
Great for my ego. Yeah. So I started in the fire service back in 1996. It's funny. I grew up, I always had a great affection for the fire service. I always thought, boy, that's something I could really want to do. And when I was a senior in high school, when I tell you, the fact that I'm the chief of department now, I was the C student of C students. I was not, if I didn't like it, I didn't want to learn it. A typical firefighter, really.
Right.
You know what I mean? And all my friends were going off to college. I said, geez, I should probably do something here. I should probably apply to college. I should probably do something, right?
Yeah.
So I did. I went to a school in Boston. I went to Wentworth. And my first day there, I was with two other guys from Brockton. We took the training. And I was in like Greek architecture 101 and like calculus that I couldn't even spell calculus. And I was like, this is just not my gig. So I felt as though every day I was like, yeah, I'm not going to class. So I got to the point where I'd take the train in, and then I'd be walking around Boston all day. And one day I walked by Northeastern right down the street, and they had like one of these old signs, pyramid signs out on the sidewalk that said EMT class, $250. So I said, wow, maybe that, the fire service thing was always something I was interested in. Maybe I'd get my EMT, I can get on the fire department, see what happens. So I went in back when you could pay cash for a class. You didn't have to, I could actually hand them $250. I gave them the money and I came back, and that whole, when I was supposed to be in class, I was there and I was paying for this. So it wasn't, it was only my money that was, I was losing. I wasn't killing my parents here. So, so it was funny. That's kind of how it took off. And I got into the EMS side of things. I sat at Christmas dinner that year, and my father made a comment to me about, so when do you go back to school? And he said, I mean, to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to school anymore. And he goes, what? And I go, I got my EMT though. So I think he was happy that I was gainfully employed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how it started. I worked in EMS for a number of years, and I got hired in the fire service in 96. And I don't know if you remember, but that was when a lot of fire departments started going ALS. So I had gone to paramedic school afterwards. I worked in EMS. I loved EMS. I loved working in EMS. I worked after I got on the fire department in EMS as well. I really enjoyed it. I stopped working, I think 2007 was the last time I worked in EMS. But I really enjoyed it. But I wanted to get on a fire department that I was going to be focused on fire guy stuff. I didn't want to worry about the EMS side. I didn't want to. I could do that on the side and do what I want, but I really didn't want to do that. So in 1996, fire departments all over the Commonwealth were hiring ALS. They were all trying to get ALS. I got cards. We used to get cards in the mail. I got cards from all over the Commonwealth for jobs, Agawam, Grafton, towns. I didn't even know where a lot of these places were. I was waiting it out because I knew Brockton was hiring another class, and that's where I wanted to be, my hometown, born and raised. And I ended up getting on Brockton, going through drill school there and been there. And I worked in EMS for many years after that. My wife always laughs because I told her we met right around the time I was getting hired. And I said to her, because we used to work a system in Brockton where it was a paramedic and an intermediate, which is now advanced. And the paramedic had to run every call, do all the stuff. And I was done having to make decisions all the time. I said to my wife, when I get hired, I'm not taking one promotional exam. I'm riding the back step for 32 years. So we see how that worked.
Yeah, that worked out well.
Yeah.
Next thing, I just couldn't help myself. Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, it's been, I tell you, we were talking a little bit before the program started. The greatest thing about the fire service is it's all encompassing. When people don't know who to call, they don't know what to do, they call us. And we just said, if you told me in 1996 that I'd be going through training 20-something years later on wearing a flak jacket and a Kevlar helmet, I would have thought you were crazy. But then again, you can't think that way because the greatest thing about the fire service, and I had this conversation with our mayor the other day because it was about something we were getting involved in. And I said, remember, Mayor, the greatest thing about the fire service is we can adapt to any environment. If you need us to do something, we're going to figure out a way to get it done. Our mission statement is what the public needs, is really what it is. And that's the greatest thing, because it's always, you hear these people talk all the time, 150 years unimpeded by progress. That is so not the truth. Do I love the tradition of the fire service? Do I love my old leather helmet? Do I love my leather boots? Yes, I love all of that. Do I love that old can you have up behind you there in the set? Absolutely. But the greatest thing about the fire service is it evolves every single day. Everything. Do we do perform a lot of the same tactics? Absolutely we do. And I know we're going to talk about some of that today. But we also learn how to work smarter at that too. We do, do different things. Yeah. And it really is, that's really important. And that's really, it's important for people to understand that we are evolving. If you need something, the fire service to do something, we're going to do it. So
figure out a way.
It's like a living tradition.
It is.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the best way to put it. I think that's great.
I think I've heard some things. I've heard this saying, and it's science is slow, and common sense is fast, right? And so, we were talking earlier, and we won't get too much into it, but looking inside to ourselves in our own profession and guys with experience, right? If looking into the history of the fire service and how things have evolved, we have figured things out long before science has proved these things, right? But it's hard because you can't just jump the gun on some of these things. You have to wait for data and results and things like that to come out. But we have the conversation. I always tell people I'm just a dumb Irish potato picking MFer, man. Like I just need to do the same thing every day, day after day after day, get the reps in, because I'm not smart enough to write these books. You know what I mean? Right. But I just need the reps. I need to get things done. But with that is where you get this sense of, well, this is wrong. If we did this, would this work? But we have to wait for data and things like that to come out. But it just kind of shows you, like, being able to look to ourselves and experienced guys, especially like these senior guys and these ranked guys who have been in here for 25, 30 plus years. We're really a smarter group than we give ourselves credit for.
And being boots on the ground, you get to see
that's it.
Things change and evolve, and see tactics work and not work. Yeah. But long before they're doing the tests and the studies on them, you're seeing them in real life, and then it's kind of like you said, trying to adapt to these different things, and then bring people on board because the data doesn't necessarily support you yet, and then as it comes out, people become a little bit more open to it because there's all this different things.
And I think when you listen to someone say that, unimpeded by progress, right? It's we can't just, unfortunately, right? We can't just jump the gun, and we have because there's all these things involved when you start getting into liability and everything like that. So it's, when I hear that's what I think about, is that we know what we need to do. It's just sometimes it can be hurdles and politics and things like that involved, and it gets tough, but we're standing in there.
I think one of the things, if you have the opportunity, and I'm sure you have, because you wouldn't be sitting here today doing a podcast that had to talk about the future of the fire service, how the fire service works. You are ingrained. You eat, sleep, and drink this, as myself. I think if you watch the UL studies, you watch anything that UL and NIST are doing to talk about flow paths and all these different things, that stuff's been going on for a long time. To your point, John, I think we looked at a lot of that stuff and said, wow, do we really do it that way? Or how should we do it this way? Should we not do it that way? You know, talking about a neutral plane, talking about, flow paths and how the air and oxygen is being brought into a fire, how it's actually discharging out other places. We've seen that on the fire ground. We've seen it on the fire ground. We may not have at the time known what exactly to call it, but I think that technology now they're using is really showing us that, hey, you know what? We were right. We knew this wasn't good. We knew this was a change in our environment.
Yeah.
I talk about a story. I had shortly before I made chief, I had a fire in a taxpayer style market, Rice's Market, been around for over 100 years, and it isn't anymore because of well, not because of us.
No, wow.
We did everything we could with the building, but it was far advanced before we got there. But it was burning multiple ceilings, burning. It was a drop ceiling, there was a tin ceiling, there was another plaster and lath ceiling above that. It was a nightmare. Thing was burning like crazy. And I was the deputy. I went to a second. The chief showed up. He said, hey, I want you to have eyes on Travis Scott. So I went in to be his operations guy inside. As I walked around the building and walked back to car 56, the deputy's car, to throw Scott on my back, and I turned around and looked. And this was quasi coming out of the depths of COVID. And I literally saw a neutral plane in this doorway, front door. It was like one of those old-fashioned stores. There was a corner door. The door we had forced and opened the door. The door's propped back, and you literally could cut a knife with the neutral plane and see the air. And I watched, because everybody's wearing masks. I watched a mask that was thrown on the ground getting pulled towards the door, and I was like, and I looked at the chief. I said, "Get him out. We're done," because the environment had changed so drastically. But to see those things, that's what Ray McCormick and all his crowd with UL and NIST are doing right now. And I think for the person who's been on a year, who maybe hasn't experienced that yet, that's where you find this stuff. That's where you look at this stuff. Yeah, over the years we've seen these things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now we're proving that, wow, this was dangerous.
Right.
This is a dangerous environment. Right. It's a change in environment that we have to make sure we're keeping our people in an environment that this was an empty store at 3 a.m. We're not making a grab in there.
No,
you know what I mean?
Risk a lot, save a lot.
Exactly.
Risk nothing for nothing, right?
Exactly. So I think, there's a lot to be said. There's newer company offices. I watched your episode with Freddie Eichels. And Freddie's the best. I was in a class with him a couple of years ago and talking about leadership. And he talks about some people, and I heard you spoke about the fact that you learn a lot from bad leaders. Yeah. And you do. I've been very fortunate. I've had very good leadership my entire career, but not everybody has. So if you're having that bad leadership, you learn a lot from that. But a lot of these studies, there's retrospective studies they're doing now, you can pick up a lot. I'm not a big computer guy. We talked about that before we came on here. But I can pull something up on YouTube pretty quick. Yeah. And you can learn a lot from that as well. Right. And I hate to say, because everyone talks about YouTube, firefighters, YouTube. That's not the case. You're picking up, you're getting information, you're gaining information.
It's giving you context. I think that sometimes there's this adversarial thing of the science versus what we're seeing in the street. But I think the best way that I've found to characterize it is the science gives us the context to understand what we're seeing or to potentially validate what we're seeing,
right?
Like you said.
No question.
And I also think what you said is kind of important about watching the videos on YouTube or going to the UL websites or whoever and watching these things is you're super fortunate to have seen that neutral plane. But fires are down all over the country, and you get that, like you said, 1 year, 5 year, 10-year person who has had maybe a handful or even a bunch of fires but never seen that. The only way they're going to see it sometimes is by going and doing the research and looking at some of these studies. And then hopefully when you get to that fire and you turn around and you see it and you go, oh, shit, this is an empty store at 3 a.m. This is bad. Let's back out. Because we all want to be aggressive firefighters, but we want to be smart, aggressive firefighters.
No question. Absolutely no question. And it's funny, we talk about this. You see this video, you see this, you see that. You're looking at pictures from this fire and that fire. I laugh because friends that are accountants, engineers, they don't do any of that stuff when they're not
No.
working. They're not at home yesterday watching videos about neutral
latest
planes and
latest accounting software.
How do I change this line item in the budget? No, they do it when they come to work. That's the difference with firefighters.
Right.
I think the public, I don't think the public even realizes that. Are there guys that show up every Thursday and get a check? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have those guys. We're always going to have those guys. But for the most part, what you guys are doing here and what you are putting out and how your love for the fire service shows that.
Yeah.
Shows that ability to say, hey, yeah, you know what? It's a Sunday afternoon. I'm sitting by the pool, but you know what? I'm watching a thing on neutral planes or backdrafts or streams and nozzles or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Most firefighters that are in the weeds and are involved like this, they're doing that every day.
Yeah.
They're doing that every day.
That comes from the guys before us, instilling it into us too. And I mean, just a good example is yesterday, Barry sends photos like, oh, this is a nightmare situation of a building and fire escapes. And like, it's all the time.
Yeah, I always try and, I mean, you're one of the experts. Anytime we have our little group chat, and anytime I see something that's like, or these guys see something that's like interesting architecture or something that's like, wow, that's pretty dangerous. So I sent one yesterday that essentially like, I don't even know how it's legal.
Probably isn't, right?
Right.
just got away with it, right?
So essentially, it was like a non-sprinklered large apartment complex, and there's like almost an overhang. I'll show you a picture of it. There's an overhang that's part of the wall, but it's wood. So like so the building is U-shaped, but it's a wooden overhang that's part of the roof. So someone could walk on top of that, and that's compromised in there.
Right.
So think of this. This is great to see. Think of this. What happens on the fronts and rears of 3-deckers when the porches rot out?
Yeah.
And it's, what is it? It's a rental home. The guy probably lives 3 towns away that owns that. Right? Old John Cummings, the old training deputy chief when I was in. Greatest thing about us having our own drill school is the city's our classroom. We walk around, we talk to this, we're in basements, we're everywhere. We see real life on a daily basis. And that was one of the first things. That was a 24-year-old kid. Oh yeah, you shouldn't go on that thing. And it is because they'll take the porches out. We have them all over the place.
They take the porches
I don't
out
care
now,
if you're in the town of Ipswich or you're in the city of Brockton or the city of Boston, city of Cambridge, wherever you are, you're going to find those porches gone, and they put some cross members up holding it in place.
Right.
And you have a fire out, ripping up, auto extending out the outside of the building. What's going to happen to those cross members? Now you got guys up cutting the roof. You got a guy who's maybe an officer who's not paying attention to what one of his younger guys are doing, or a guy that's maybe being a little too aggressive. He's out on that overhang now.
Yeah.
So you're right. It probably isn't legal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's
it's like,
too much work to rip the roof off and trim that thing off so there's no ledge. But they keep
and
you're right.
It probably is like
brace it, and that's that.
Nobody inspected it. Nobody pulled a permit for it. And I think that's probably one of the bigger things that presents danger to us in our job is all the unpermitted, uninspected, chopping up buildings, adding doors, adding walls, adding, this and that. And especially when you get into bigger buildings that, generally follow a plan and then all of a sudden they don't.
My position now, I sit on the zoning board of appeals. So we have to, do variances, special permits, different things like that. And then we'll deny things, and sometimes people go ahead and do it anyways.
Oh, yeah.
And if there's no one else out there watching it, my thing, basement apartments, they all laugh on the zoning board when it comes up about a basement apartment. I start like shaking.
Oh yeah.
Because all I'm thinking of, the residents that are down there, and then us, we have to go down there.
Right.
Well, we have the right size windows, but they're 5 feet off the ground. That grandmother's going to climb out of the basement, or that firefighter, after fighting a fire in that basement, is going to climb out of that basement like that.
Right.
I mean, and then it happens, and he can't get out. Now we're sending more people. A very good friend of mine, who I taught with at the fire academy, had a fire in a community where they lost a member, and he was in the basement trying to get this kid out of the basement. It was a basement apartment. They put the fire out. There was still some fire above multiple ceilings in this basement. And people don't think of those things. They don't, it's like we could get into a whole conversation on electric vehicles right now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how
actually we would love to if you want to come back and get into
that is
because
scary, and it's also new to us right now.
Yep.
Again, the fire service adapting to the environment. We have politicians and people pushing an agenda for electric vehicles and different things of that nature.
Yeah.
It's great. But when one of those cars burns, that's like running 20 diesel trucks for a year.
Right.
I mean, and the dangers of it, the grid can't even handle all
No,
that.
I can't. No,
And just kind of an offshoot on how fast we adapt. I've already seen an advertisement. I don't know if you've seen it, Chief, for a tool for fighting those fires. It slides under the car.
Yeah.
It goes up. It pierces just the
Yes.
right depth, and it puts water into the battery.
Yes.
And I mean, we're talking. Granted, these batteries have been around for a while, but we started seeing the problem in the last handful of years, and then really like the last year or two, it seems like it's gotten crazy. And already somebody in the fire, I imagine a firefighter
in a firehouse at a coffee
sitting
table.
at a table was like, well, what if we do this? And now there's already a tool for it, and it's probably not
I
going to
think
be.
they're at FDIC this year because I saw an advertisement for them.
It's probably not going to be standard because it's new and expensive, and we don't quite have the numbers. But I bet you in 10 years you're going to see that in every department.
In Europe, they're taking these vehicles and with a crane and they're putting them in a dumpster.
Yeah.
And leaving them in a dumpster.
Yep.
Because they don't know how much. We're doing a lot of research on it. Deputy Chief Jeff Marchetti, Deputy Chief Kevin Galligan, both on the hazmat team, they're doing a lot of research right now on how we're going to handle it because there is no
have a good solution for you guys.
Cut and dry.
I know of a scrapyard in Brockton with a crane and dumpsters.
Yeah. I think I've heard of that.
Just have
Do you have a connection there? Yeah.
There might have
dumpsters.
been a massive fire there caused by a lithium-ion battery.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was gonna ask my father about that. But that's certainly something we could have on standby all the time. We got dumpsters and we have a massive crane, and literally all it is to take it and put it in.
Put it in.
I was actually thinking about like getting a dumpster specially made, one that you could just have
So it
filled
won't
with
leak.
water.
Yeah.
And so it won't leak.
Yeah.
The good news is about that yard though is it's 100% self-contained, and we have oil separators
Yes.
and stuff.
Yes.
And all that stuff gets cleaned out a couple times a year, so there's no environmental impact.
Yep.
So I don't know. That's
Good to know.
That's
That's actually why we brought you here.
Yeah.
Just
I'm
to
trying to
plug
plug eco recycling.
email address is John's a piece of crap.
I thought we were going to talk
Johnny
about
Piece of
2.5,
Crap.
3 decades, balloon frame construction.
No, but this is great, and this is why we want. Like we're trying to build a guest list, and I think we're starting to get a pretty robust one because as we get out there, we get more people that that we're kind of honored, like having you like be a part of it. And but in the future, I think if we could get Galligan and you or whoever to come in, because we've been that's one of the things we've been trying to find somebody that's got it, because we don't have that knowledge. Like we just don't have it.
A lot of that stuff is so new, and what we're seeing with it now is really. I mean, they just showed a bus.
Oh yeah.
I just saw on Twitter yesterday. Burned up to 82 hours. This thing could burn.
So we just have, I think Harvard just we did a brief on it maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So Harvard just bought a fleet of complete electric buses.
Yeah, they actually shut down the MBTA is doing it too, right? Because they just shut down the yard up little past Border Square. And I think they're going to
All electric.
I don't know if they're doing all of them all electric, but I'm pretty sure they're doing some all electric buses. Yeah,
Sure. Pretty crazy. The Brockton Public Schools were going to buy all electric buses. The grid in our area cannot handle what the charging components would be for that. So there's a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of misinformation.
Yeah.
And again, what happens? The fire service gets stuck in the middle of the whole thing because who has to solve that problem?
Correct.
And you know what happens? We end up solving the problem.
Right.
We'll figure something out. We have piercing
Right.
guns going up through into the part where it's supposed to be, or we're
Right.
putting them in dumpsters. We'll come up with a solution.
Or
That's
the
greatest
glass packs for like the scooters and,
Yep.
and stuff like
Yep.
that.
Put it right over it. Yep.
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 So I was actually talking to Sean Galligan because we had this whole conversation about these, electric battery fires and everything like that, electric car batteries and all that. And I think he hit the nail on the head, and he said, do I think that like this solar tech and this electric tech with these batteries, do I think it's the future? Absolutely. He said, but we're just not there yet. The agenda is to push all this stuff out to try to be more green. What people don't realize is that 70% of our grid is supplied by coal.
Fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're not saving
making
ourselves.
Other
electricity.
things also have to change
Yeah.
before it's really.
And
question.
what Sean had said, and he was right. I think he's right. Is eventually you're gonna have a battery this big, and it's gonna run your entire house.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we're just not there yet.
We're not
just
there.
not there.
No.
The tech, either the tech is there and it's just not
Yep.
been bestowed upon us, or
It's at
just,
DARPA.
or we're just
Right.
we're
What's
just
that?
not.
It's at DARPA right now.
Yeah,
Right. And
So-
tech evolves so fast that in 20 years that might very well
very
be,
well
or
could.
it'll be hydrogen
Yeah.
Or
cars
something
or
else,
something
yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And
hydrogen, they're pushing hydrogen big now.
yeah,
too.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
teach in the flammable gas program at the academy, and we went to a seminar on hydrogen vehicles, and I walked in and I was like, have they ever heard of the Hindenburg? Like, what are we doing here? What is the thought process here? But they actually flow it, which actually creates the energy. It's so different.
Interesting.
It's weird. Yeah, I was afraid we were all going to like kind of lift off the ground.
Yeah,
And
right.
Well, so in a
cool.
few
Not
years,
Yeah.
we'll be doing an episode on that. Hopefully, we're around in a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Very cool.
moving forward, we've got one thing that we want to talk about. One thing that we've kind of been building here at Job Talks is our bookshelf, and Freddie Eichels has been huge in that. He's been giving us different recommendations for books, and so when I had talked to you, I had asked you for a good book recommendation, and so Chief recommends to everybody, and in his words, from a first-year guy to a guy and a veteran that's been on as long as him, keeps this book close by. Collapse of Burning Buildings by Vincent Dunns. So I went through this book and I went back and I reread a whole bunch of things, and it's the book. It's an easy read, like you said. It's made for guys like us.
Yep.
Highly recommend it to anybody listening. If you haven't read it, do so. There's
Put
there's
a link
wealth of
to
information.
get it in our description, and then we'll put it on our website as well.
Yep.
I haven't read this book yet, and but I've heard
Really good
I've heard really good things about it, and I don't want to get this wrong, but I believe another podcast, the Getting Salty guys, interviewed Vincent Dunn, and I want to say it was either him or Norman. I don't remember, but one of them also, just going back to your story about like going to college and kind of not doing it. I believe it was Vincent Dunn, but I don't want to get it wrong. Like, had no education, put himself through college basically to learn how to write, and then put out all of these.
You're correct.
I think it is done. Yeah, it put out all of these books that literally have changed the fire service.
They have. This, and to John's point, this book here, I said, this book, they're not going to tell you how to throw ground ladders. This isn't a textbook.
No.
But the kid coming out of drill school, out of the fire academy, wherever he's coming out of, can pick this up and he can learn so much about his battle space, about his environment. Vincent Dunn's gone into this whole new thing now with battle space books and fire dynamics and more onto collapse of burning buildings in one of his other books. But there are all the good thing about this book is that there are actually case studies at the beginning, and a real big one at the end about the Wall Bombs fire, supermarket fire in 1978 that killed 6 New York City firemen. So this is a great book. As a chief of department, I thumb through this on a regular basis, and they're all over I know we bought when I was in the training division, we bought a bunch of these books for the firehouses. Just throw them on the table, see if
on
they
the
pick them
coffee
up.
table.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, and I like that. Like I like the idea that the fire department is invested in the people and the education, and like we'll throw a few books or have their own library or whatever the case is. And I also really like the idea of a battle space, and like coming from the military, as Barry can attest, is when you're going to fight in the desert, you don't go train in the jungle.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You got to kind of train to your environment.
You guys
And
didn't train in the jungle?
let's see, my generation, us old farts, no. But yeah, like having like understanding that it is a battle space, and understanding like where you are, what you're in, what you're likely to see, because you can't prepare for everything, as we've talked about in the past, but you can prepare for what's most likely to you're most likely to encounter. So
No question. And in New England, we're seeing so many of these new lightweight wood truss buildings going up, and we're seeing so much of that. There are inherent dangers with those, because a lot of those void spaces are not sprinkled. They're large void spaces that are going to carry a lot of fire. But any community you go through, I don't care if it's a small farm community, you're going to have balloon frame construction.
Yep.
You're going to have taxpayers in your downtown. You might not look at it like a taxpayer, like they're all over New York City. But there are taxpayers. They're basically buildings that were built years ago to pay the taxes till they could put a big building up, and they're built with void spaces and fire stops and all these things. But they're dangerous to the average firefighter.
right, and if you attack them incorrectly, they're extremely dangerous.
One thing that this book pointed out to me, and I lightweight building construction, right? Here I am thinking, oh, this is like the latest and greatest. Not the greatest to me. I just mean this is what's out, and this is what they're doing. This is how they're building things now. But after going through this book, and you realize that lightweight construction has been around forever now. Like trusses aren't a new thing. Trusses are going back to I don't know how far back they're going, but I know that large buildings were being built with trusses in the early 1900s.
Well, I mean, think about truss bridges. You go back literally centuries before people understood that technology.
So these engineers have been out here doing this stuff for a long time, and so you start reading into. I forget the exact word for the inspections, but they're like passive inspections, more or less, where the engineer just sends an affidavit to the building inspector that this is good to go. Well, now you're counting on construction workers to actually do the right thing, not take any shortcuts. But then even when that happens, now we're looking at fireproofing materials that really aren't even, I'm going to say, properly tested. And then you're looking at all the other construction guys going in, or the tradesmen going in, poking holes and not filling them correctly and all these things. I mean, so it's like you take these like old, like monolithic structures that were heavy steel with all the beams and everything to support them.
Full width lumber.
Right.
Yeah, and you take structures like that, and they're actually like
much safer.
They're like safe, and then and now it's just not the case.
Just case in point, my house. My house was built around 1900. They say if you see 1900 on the MLS, it's probably just because they don't know the actual date. It was somewhere around there. When we did the inspection of my house, I noticed some of the ceiling, the roof joists were kind of burned, and they sistered them and whatever. But I went back and looked at it afterwards, and what I think came to the conclusion, judging by the construction around my house and when it was built, and that is, I think that my house actually burned down, and they reused, because these things don't burn through, because it just doesn't make sense where the burn boards are, and they obviously didn't replace the ones between them.
Yeah, right.
I think they were able to reuse some of those boards, and then probably when somebody bought it in the 70s, they were like, you should sister these up or something like that, because then they have like the newer lumber there.
So think about whatever that Japanese torch.
They burn the wood, and the oil preserves it.
And then it makes it even stronger somehow. So I mean, I guess if it's not completely burned through and you sister it up, it's probably just as good.
Yeah.
But
I think if you look at, and I'm certainly not like the structural expert whatsoever, I definitely need to read this book, but I try to take like an interest in, like you said, like the city's our classroom. So I try to like go around, but I think like for the commercial industry, it's a cost-effective and efficient way to build, and it's structurally sound, but not under fire conditions. And when when I was in Florida, my wife tolerates me in many ways.
I think that's all of us. But
and
Shout
we
out
drove
Darren.
by
Thank
where
you
we
for
were
putting up with
staying.
Barry.
Where we were staying, there's like an open construction site that I may or may not have ventured into, because they had all these. They had like literally prefab, like huge piles of prefab trusses. I was like, "Oh, babe, look at these," and she's like, "Can we just go now?"
Why would
she's like due to have a baby within any day now. By the way,
I was like, "Oh, look at these gusset plates, babe! Like this is all just held together with gusset plates." She's like, "Can we just please go get our food?"
Right.
But it was very interesting. Like you really realize like how, if exposed to a fire load, like how quickly this stuff is gonna go.
And one of the things, to go back to this book, and I think if anything, there's all the stories, they talk about a number of different things. At the very end, they do the case study on the Wall Bomb Supermarket Fire in 1978. August 2nd, I think we're coming up on 44 years in a couple of weeks here, a week or so here, 44 years of that, and it killed 6 firefighters. One of the things that Vincent Dunns, which was really interesting when you read this book, and I've seen interviews with him, I've actually seen him speak, he actually talks about the fact, he said, well, if I was there, would those guys have survived? And he went, no, because I don't really know a lot about trusses. This is 1978. This is a 1920s era built building. Like you said, back to the early 1900s, they were still making trusses. This bowstring truss, it was
gonna
truss
say,
number,
I was going to say,
truss
was
number
that a
5.
bowstring
It was
truss
a bowstring
roof?
truss roof.
With a rain roof.
And it also put a rain roof on top. So when you read this case study, and it's interesting, we have a number of these throughout the city of Brockton, I know, that we don't do a great job labeling them. It's past word of mouth that we know they're there.
right.
Which is we probably should do a better job of that. But when they arrived, they had a fire in the mezzanine. Smoke conditions, nothing drastic. They get up. They sent a crew to the roof. They got up to the roof to try to start cutting the roof, and they went. This wasn't just a rain roof they put right on top. This rain roof actually was protecting a dip in the center of the roof. 6 or 8 feet down was where the rest of the roof was. They couldn't get down there to cut it.
Damn.
Guys are fighting fire or trying to fight heavy heat conditions in the mezzanine where the offices were, and they weren't making much resistance until truss number 5, I think it was, collapsed, came down. Firefighters fell in, stuff fell on top of firefighters. 40,000 square foot of space was taken over because it was such a huge area. 20-foot spans, 100 building.
It's like a void.
I mean, that's a huge void, and this is what killed those guys. They had to dig in through the sidewalls of the building to get out what survivors and what members they could. So it's when you think about the building, we always used to talk about the Zayres building in Brockton on North Main Street. It was a bowstring truss roof. I used to go there all the time when I was a little kid with my parents. Get this, get that, whatever. And now it's a storage property, like public storage building. Well, what do people put in public storage?
Yeah,
Everything.
What don't they put?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
I guess the better question is, what don't they put in those buildings? Now, they got stuff in those buildings with this bowstring truss roof. We don't know what's in there. It's all cordoned off. That bowstring truss roof is still holding up this structural roof. And now we don't know what's going to potentially, grocery store, what's in a grocery
Probably
store?
condensed.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You kind of can
Yeah.
figure out what's in
Right.
what's in a grocery store. We don't know what's in this building.
I mean, even if it's not anything crazy, it's all plastic,
It's all, yeah.
course
right?
it is.
If a
Fireline.
couch, a
Yep.
mattress, whatever. So
It's
it's
all
just
synthetic.
it's all solid gasoline. You know, it's all
And anything with a truss, you got to remember too, once one part of the truss goes, the whole truss goes.
Right.
Things going
So
on.
it's not, it's very structurally sound until it's not.
Right.
And when
Yeah.
it's not, it's dramatically.
Right.
I remember I started on a smaller department and I don't recall that there were any bowstring trusses around, so I really hadn't even talked about them much. And we did a class in Boston, that hazmat class, and I remember the deputy at the time, Morrissey, had come in and he was like, "What's up with this ceiling?" And I was like, And he was like, bowstring truss, and he kind of showed and talked about it. And
Yep.
and
Was
like
this
you
Mike
said,
or Eddie?
Ed Morrison, yeah.
Eddie's
And
the best.
yeah, and
That's
I mean,
so
and it's
funny,
great
man.
because you get guys that understand that stuff, and you kind of just going back is you have to start pointing this stuff out, because if you don't see it every day, it's not going to be in your CAD necessarily. You need the information to be passed along.
So how many
to
years
people.
How many years did you have on that?
I
We
had
had that
s-
conversation about.
So it was our first year, probably within my
Okay.
first
Yeah.
6 months at Cambridge.
That's
So
awesome.
I was about 7 months on the job for my 7 years prior without
Yep.
ever really talking about it. And then
So there you look at a guy like Eddie Morrissey, well-respected, well-known deputy chief in the city of Cambridge, family history in the fire service. What was he doing? He was passing on information that was given to him, and
Right.
the importance of it. You know, we're going to talk about things today with balloon frame and stuff. I didn't make this stuff up, fellas.
Yeah, right.
I had great people ahead before me that told me this stuff.
Right.
And we just have to keep passing that on through venues and avenues like this. This is why, I mean, we didn't have this years ago. This is awesome because someone can come on this and they might be working in a department where they don't have great leadership. They don't have bowstring trusses. They don't have the ability to learn this information. Maybe they're not good readers. Maybe they pick up Vincent Dunns' book and go, I just don't like reading.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Now they watch this. We talk about this because of people that have passed things down from
Right.
generation
Yeah,
to generation.
absolutely.
Right.
That's how the fire service works. I say that every time we're sitting around
Yep.
the kitchen table. I'm giving you, I'm not that smart. C student in high school, I told you guys.
Yeah.
Barely got into college, then couldn't stay there. My point being is, I'm passing down what people gave me. And this is where we talk about lightweight wood frame truss and stuff like that. This is newer. This is stuff we have to really begin to really look at. We're talking about EVs and electric vehicles. This is stuff we'll pass down.
Right.
But this other stuff right now, we really have to pass on. And kudos obviously to Eddie. Eddie's a close friend, and I knew, you know that's the way he is because he's always talking about that stuff.
yeah.
And he will. He's retired. He's still talking about it. But that's what's
Wait,
great.
did Eddie Morrissey retire?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Recently.
Yeah.
know
But
that.
but unless these buildings get torn down or burned, they're going to be here for generations.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you have to continue that training through
question.
the generations of firefighters that are
No
going to be
question.
there. Because again, my house is from 1900. It's built differently than a house from 2022. And being that all hazards and catch all, you got to know how both of them are going to act. Otherwise, you're going to put people in bad spots.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's no question. There's no question. Yeah.
So I think it's funny. I didn't know if we like how far into the book we were going to talk about but I think I got some questions on some stuff. But I think I'll probably kind of wait for the end because I think it'll kind of help. I don't know. I think maybe we'll just wait to the end because I think a lot of it we can tie it in with the 2.5-story wood frame construction and some things like that. So
I think that's good.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Chief, I'm gonna hand this over to you, and you can click through it as quickly.
You want it to come back in one piece?
So
right.
you could just hit the arrow
this is
button.
Florence Street, correct?
This is Florence Street. Yep.
So I have to tell you, my disclaimer on this fire is I've looked at it a lot. Deputy Chief Galligan was the acting chief that day.
Correct.
This is our bread and butter in the city of Brockton, the town of Stoughton, city of Cambridge. We have these everywhere. I was actually at my daughter's college graduation, listening on Broadcastify, but I was there.
Right.
My wife goes, "You are not. You have one daughter.
Yeah.
And she's going to graduate from college once.
Right.
Can you please sit down?"
But this building's only going to burn
Yeah,
once.
I hope. Yeah. This was actually about 3 houses down from where I grew up.
Oh, really?
Actually, in downtown. Yeah. So this is Florence Street, very congested area. All 3-deckers, 2.5s, 2.5-story wood frames, bread and butter, balloon frame, knee walls, attic spaces. The dangers of these buildings are not the collapse issues we think of. I say that, and then I go back to John Davies in Worcester, who was killed years ago, and that was a 3-decker. And I remember when that happened thinking, oh my goodness, are these 3-story wood frames and these 2.5s, are they coming to their end of life?
Yeah.
Is this something we have to be concerned about? These were built in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Are these, well, there have been modifications done, different things happen. These are solid buildings, full-length lumber from the sill right to the base of the roof.
It's old growth lumber.
Growth lumber.
Yeah.
It's full dimension lumber. This stuff is going to take a while to burn. I have as a chief officer, and as a firefighter and as a company officer, I had such a more comfort level operating in these buildings because of the fact that I knew they were going to stand up for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Could we get trapped in flashover? Could we get trapped in a number of other things? Absolutely. But structural collapse was not was not in the forefront there because of this. You look at a building like this, and just to talk about it real quick. So when I look at a house like this and I see a 2.5-story wood frame versus a 3-decker, what's the difference? Well, a 3-story wood frame is 3 full floors. A 4-story wood frame is 4 full floors. You go out to the city of Worcester. My son goes to Holy Cross, so I'm out in Worcester a lot. And when I drive through there, I see a lot of 3-deckers with peaked roofs. That's not, say, a 3.5. A 2.5 is because you can basically live in that half space. There are some serious structural concerns, though, and differences we have to be worried about with a 2.5 versus a 3-decker. Fire gets into the walls in a 3-story wood frame house, and it goes up through the balloon frame. It's going to get into that cock loft, and it's going to battle around in the cock loft, stay within the different bays that it's in. Completely understandable. Do we have to go after it and get it? Absolutely. The bigger concerns I see with something like this in a 2.5, and the concerns I've had over the years, and with the fire spread in a building like this, you get a simple basement fire. You get a fire in an outlet. You get a fire in a chimney chase. Think about a lot of these houses years ago. The old stoves and ovens were vented into the chimneys. Mm-hmm. Do you think those seals held up well? Now, a lot of times you'll go in and you'll see a plate over where that vent hole was. That people pull those plates off. Now you have a contents fire that's now going to get into the structure. And when we look at a building like this, you really need to think of, especially with balloon frame construction, is it a room and contents fire or is it a structure fire? Room and contents fire, I'm probably handling it with the first assignment, potentially, as long as it doesn't spread.
Right.
I have a structure fire. Any literature you read, anywhere you look, I'm going to need at least 25 to 30 personnel to get there to do that. I'm at least a second alarm to get this job done. Depending on what department you're working on, you could be 4 alarms deep. Depending on the weather of the day like we've been having out there, you could be 8 alarms deep. Who knows? Right. But my point is determining that contents fire versus a structure fire, or contents that's now gotten into the structure, it's still a structure fire. We have to plan for the worst. Yeah. But when you look at this, if I look at this building, when I look at the outside of the building going up, I look where it meets the base of the roof, right down where the soffit and fascia are. If you basically make a triangle just inward on the sides of that, that's where your knee walls are going to be. Knee walls are dangerous because you don't know what's in them. A simple car fire on a building like this that's parked next to the building, gets up, what are the soffit usually made of?
Yeah, now, well, aluminum or
vinyl,
plastic.
plastic, aluminum,
Very little.
Yeah.
Do you think the fire is going to spread in there? Why is it built like that? Well, it's built like that to kind of vent the attic space, vent those knee wheels, so it doesn't get all jammed up, right? So now that simple car fire is going to get into that knee wall. Once it gets in and starts baffling around in the knee wall, it's going to spread up through those bays.
Right.
And now it's going to get into the attic space, right? It's also going to spread across potentially underneath that floor
Right.
into the other knee wall. This fire in the attic space is going to come down. Remember something. Fire, heat, smoke is going to find the path of least resistance. Convective currents are going to take it up. We know that. We know convective currents are going to take it up. The wind may push it, but it's also going to find the path of least resistance.
Right.
So don't think for a second that fire in the attic isn't going to come down that other side potentially and fill that other knee wall, all right? So the dangers in that, the first and second floors, we can treat a lot like a three-decker. Because it's squared off, everything's normal. When you get up and I go in the back set of stairs to stretch a line to the third floor because I potentially have a fire in the knee walls, but we've also got, maybe we had a fire in the basement that spread right up. I'm sent to that third or half story. I get up there. I'm basically climbing into an oven because more than likely that fire is all around me.
Right.
Where we run into trouble is we get into the middle and go, okay, yeah, I think it's in the structure. Let's pull. What happens now?
Now you're creating flow path.
Now I'm creating a huge flow path issue. Now I'm creating a problem where I just said that fire is going to find the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
It's going to come down on top of me. We had a captain many years ago, and if you ever listen to the Fallen Firefighters podcast, National Fallen Firefighters, Chief Kenny Galligan has a former captain, Joe Lakacha, where the ceiling came down on him, and he went out the front window, and there happened to be an aerial going by to go to the roof. That ladder wasn't there. He would have fallen right out the window, but he dove out of that building. One of the first tactics, one of the first ground ladders we throw at a 2.5-story wood frame is a 35-foot roof ladder, that working fire ladder we use all the time, right to that front window. Yeah. And we'll go up and potentially get ready to, we won't necessarily always take that window out, depending, because we don't want to change the flow path in the building. But it's there in case someone's got to come out that window. There was a great picture of a firefighter by the name of Bill Benavelli years ago, and I'll use his name because he's an awesome guy. He was on Rescue 2 for many years, and I worked with him in EMS for a while. He actually dove out, and they didn't have a 35 there. They had just gotten to the fire, and he was on the rescue. He was searching above the fire. He dove out that window, and he's literally holding on to a roof space, just as you would see on this outcropping here. Wow. Holding onto it, and fire's blowing out over his head. Wow. And the ceiling had come down on him. So those are bigger concerns with 2.5-story woods versus, well, how do you combat that? How do you know if the fire's in that attic space? Right. Well, do it from the stairwell. When you're in that stairwell and you're ready to make that push into that room, get out there, get a longer pike pole, get a Boston rake, and reach in from that stairwell. Give a quick pull. Yeah. Because why? I have the safety of getting back down these stairs. Right. Once I get into the middle of that room, I don't have that safety anywhere.
Luxury's gone.
Yeah, that luxury of that is gone. So that's a concern. You can even pull a little bit in the stairwell. Is it above me here? Sure. We had a fire on Father's Day back in, I think 1997 or so. And it was a similar 2.5-story wood frame house, very similar to this. And we got up inside, and we were in the stairwell, and the classic was always start to pull from the stairs. So I reach up, the ceiling was gone. They started to hit it with water from behind me. They were over my head hitting it with water. The water was coming down and boiling my gloves. That's how hot it was. Wow. The ceiling was gone. It had burnt everything away. We ended up getting pulled out. We fought it defensively. We attacked it. We ended up knocking it down and going back inside. But the importance of understanding that structure and how that structure is built is as important as the fire in it, because you have to have an idea of where the fire is going to go, how it's going to get there. And, whether it comes up through a chimney chase, a basic, we're coming into that season. We're going to be coming into that season in October, November. People's furnaces are going to start coming on. Now, what happens in a delayed ignition? Too much oil, fires, boom, big smoke. Right? Well, it can blow the front panel right off the firebox. You could have a fire. People put everything in their basements. You could have a fire. Where's it going to go through? It's going to go through that chimney chase, right through that chimney collar, all the way up through. It may not get to the knee wall for a while, but you're going to have fire in that chimney chase all the way up. So void spaces, although these buildings are so structurally sound, void space fires are great in here, just like an ordinary constructed building, like a taxpayer or anything like that. Right. And to think about it, when we talk about lightweight wood frame, we talked a little bit earlier, all those void spaces are not sprinkled. So you're going to get fire in those. And remember something, we have a structural concern with that building.
Oh yeah.
We have a much bigger
right
structural
away.
concern.
Right away.
Yes.
And that chimney space is, and again, I know I've related to my own house a few times, but that's a really good example. So again, my house is kind of platform construction, but if you go to the attic, you can see the basement.
Of course you can.
Through the old chimney that
the
my
chimney
furnace
chase.
vents
Yep.
right up. You know.
Yep. I used to, you take a set of dice or some nails, drop them. You're going to find them in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just going to go right down. You can do that in a knee wall. Throw them in the corner of a knee wall. It's going to drop right down.
Right.
Now, are there some 2.5-story woods and 3-deckers over the years that have had fire stops put into them? Absolutely. One of the things people forget with these types of buildings, we talked a lot about convective heat and convective movement of this fire, and the convection is going to make it rise. What happens now when you get a good knock on this fire? We get this thing knocked down. The fire was on the second floor, extended to the half story. I get the heavy fire knocked down in the structure. Where should I be checking? Below it. Drop down fire is a real deal.
Right.
Platform constructed. I have my house is a center entry colonial, built in 2000. Platform stick construction, not a big deal. Balloon frame's a different story. We always talk about, and you hear about, and you read about, shoddy overhaul is what causes rekindles.
Right.
And a lot of times, because people don't know where they're looking, you have that convective heat that's in the structure, and that fire is going to go up through the walls. Once you've knocked a lot of that down, opened it up, those embers aren't going to rise anymore, but they will drop.
They will fall.
So you'll hear me on the fire ground a lot of times. Okay, we got the main body knocked down. Okay, I got a company rehab. Let's get in there, get into the first floor, whatever the floor is below it. Let's start opening up the ceilings and the corners on the balloon frame sides, because you're going to have those embers falling. Next thing you know, they're boarding up the building. You got smoke coming out the roof if you don't do a good job at that. So it's not because people aren't aggressive firefighters. That's not it at all. It's a lot of times looking afterwards. Right. Where is that drop down fire is a big deal. And I know when I was a deputy, if anyone's like West Wire and those guys, they go, oh, he's talking about drop down fire. Because I talk about it all the time, because nothing more embarrassing than have to potentially go back to a building that you were just at the day before.
Yeah,
because
right.
You
talked about that.
You didn't do a good job. And it wasn't that you didn't do a good job. You did a great job knocking down the main body of fire. But there's a lot more. We all know. The fun of the fire is in the first half hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Then 3
After
hours
that, it's
later,
just
you're
work.
like, they've
No,
done
real
this
work.
investigation.
Yep.
That's where you get your paycheck.
Yeah, that's
all
the
overall.
because you've already spent yourself, and we talked about this before. You already spent yourself, and then you got 2 more hours of just
Pulling
yanking down
ceilings,
ceilings
yeah.
and walls
Absolutely.
and spraying hot
That's the
spots.
hard part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually just talking to a friend of mine, because she was in she lived in the first floor. A girl that I grew up with in Brockton. She lived in the first floor of this apartment building in Stoughton, and it was a 2.5-story. It ended up being a 3-alarm. And so, and it's funny because after reading that book, now I have like a different view of some of the things that happened, because in the book he talks about like what we consider collapse, right? We consider, when someone asks you what's a collapse, you'd say, oh, the building walls fell in, or the roof fell in, and all this stuff. Well, he gets right down, and he says, if a ceiling collapses in a building, you have a building collapse.
Yeah.
Right.
And we don't look at it like that, but that's how you have to look at it, because you have your hierarchy of structural members, and that's how he breaks it all down.
Right.
When the fire went up a chase.
Yep.
And the fire was like 3D communicated throughout the whole building, except for the basement, but there was smoke down there.
Yep.
And so, but I'm in there now on the first floor. They're working up above me, and we got another line being stretched to go up to the 3rd floor. And I'm working in the 1st floor where we think it originated. We thought it started where the power came in.
Sure.
And the wind was, 60-mile-per-hour winds that day. But she told me, she was on the couch, and she took a nap, and she was like, she thought she smelled something. She woke up, and she's like, I smell smoke. And then that's when she got her neighbors out and, called 911. But it just goes to show you how long that these buildings can smolder before they actually take off. Because when we ripped first off, the drop ceiling collapsed after we were in there for a few minutes. And then after, we were able to walk on top of all that, we started pulling down the next ceiling, plaster and lath. And so we're ripping all that down. And once we got all that down in the front room, like where we thought it originated, the entire ceiling was, across multiple bays a lot of bays, it was all smoldering.
Yep.
And so it was like, for all that to be smoldering and to be burned the way it is, I mean, that fire had to be going for hours and
Probably quite a
hours.
bit. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And so you can see how a rekindle would take hours and hours and
Right.
hours and hours, like you said, go back the next day
Yep.
even
Right.
to get to one of these.
Yep.
you know.
Scary stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I've always thought of like burning down as like the fire actually burning downwards, but that's a really good point. Is that it's just embers that drop, or you
Yeah.
know, like hot chunks of wood that drop down
Yep.
in these open balloon frame, and
Yep.
then they end up
Mm-hmm.
and they smolder down there because you didn't get them and didn't put them out and didn't see them.
Absolutely. There's no question.
Interesting.
This is a good picture here. I don't know if this is coming up, but so see these porches.
Just for real quick,
Yes.
Chief. Sorry. So for our audio listeners, and we're going to post all this stuff on our Facebook and Instagram, so you guys can go back and look at it if you listen on audio. But looking at a 2.5-story wood frame house with porches on the Bravo side of the building.
Yep.
Pretty long.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it's good size 2.5.
I think this is a really good picture for like communicating the importance of doing a 360.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
in the front, it just looks like
I
a
thought that was
normal
a
2.5
typical
story wood
2.5,
frame, and
yeah.
you look
Yep.
at this, how long
It's
it is.
actually longer than you
Yeah.
think.
Very long.
So I think one of the things, and just to be able to be familiar as a newer firefighter, as a senior firefighter, as at whatever level you're at, 2.5 stories and 3 deckers are very similar. You'll see some modifications, but the driveway side is usually always on the kitchen side. I walk up that driveway, I go in that back door, I'm probably in the kitchen. I also have a back stairs that I can go all the way up to the half story. One of the things that's not the case a lot of times in 2.5 story wood frames is that front stair will only go to the second floor. So if you're making your first stretch, and I know I got fire blowing out of that front window on the alpha side on the half story, I probably want to get to that back set of stairs.
Yeah.
It may go up in the front, not always though.
So both egresses then are in the back, or do they count the porch with?
They'll count the porch with potential fire escape from the half. You might have the half story
Yeah.
may have an actual fire escape going
Okay.
down it towards the front.
Yeah.
Or they might have a porch
Right.
up there or windows up there.
Okay.
And then the back set of stairs is your main egress.
Right.
There's a reason why you can't even build true 2.5s and 3 deckers anymore,
Right.
and it's because
Because of
of
the egress.
because of the egress,
Right.
because of the stairs.
Okay.
So once you get into that kitchen, whatever floor you're on, a lot of times the next room in you're going to find like a dining room. Then a front room is going to be, sometimes people convert them into bedrooms,
Yeah.
but it could be a family room. And usually what will happen is those bedrooms will be down the non-driveway side. Just to kind of, you go on medical calls, you go on investigations. When you find anomalies to this, these are the things you kind of got to keep an eye on. You know what I mean? Because that's going to be the one that you're going to go, wow, this is pretty interesting. This is, I might not necessarily remember this building, but I'll remember what I saw here. And it
Right.
may be in other places. Talking about the porches, I mean, you look at what happened down in Nantucket, careless disposal of cigarettes,
Oh, yeah.
smoking materials. We see this all over the place. Someone will go out on their porch, they'll smoke a cigarette. Next thing you know, the porch is going like crazy. Well, that second floor porch we see here on the Bravo side, that porch gets going. What's right next to it? Just above it, the soffit. Those convective currents are going to bring it right up into that soffit.
Right.
And next thing you know, we have an outside porch fire that now has actually connected to the knee walls and into that half story. So these are the things, when you talk about, the different levels of where your thought process should be at a fire. When we always say firefighters should be following the orders they're given and adapting to the situations around them and seeing in front of them. The company officer is looking out here, the chief officer might be looking out here, and maybe that 10, 15, 20 minutes. This is my concern, a porch on the side of the house here. Well, I need to get someone, the fire. I see the main body of fire. Where I really got to start looking at those knee walls and into that attic space in that half story. So the big dilemma is you pull up to something like this, and I always say this, and I'll pose this to guys sometimes around the firehouse. So just as a side note, I get in early to my office, and then I leave and I'll go out on the road and I'll say to my secretary, "I'll see you in a little bit. I got to go to City Hall, and I'm gonna stop by some of the stations." She goes, "See you around 3."
Yeah.
Because next thing you know, I'm drinking coffee, talking to everybody. We're talking about tactics and different stuff like this. So you pull up and you have this second floor porch going like crazy, right? Do you hit it with the deck gun?
I mean, we saw in Rockland a great display there where they just knocked that whole fire down.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
That Chief Duffy's a
That
friend
was
of
a
mine.
large body
And I
of
remember
fire.
calling him afterwards after I saw, because I went to
Yeah.
that fire. It was just before I took over, and the chief wasn't coming in for out of town stuff. And I went to that fire, and I said, well, this thing took a pretty good burn. Wasn't there long I left. I remember seeing the video, calling Chief Duffy afterwards going, holy mother of God, did they
Yeah.
make a stop?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was
That's
like
a really
the timing
cool.
on that
was-
was
yeah.
like
That was
impeccable.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
They couldn't have hit that better.
No.
So you see this porch out front here, right? And you get the deck gun in line? Absolutely. Listen, you got to give it your gusto. Bang
Yeah.
it out quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be in the structure, but you got more. The cavalry's coming.
Yeah.
Cavalry's
Right.
coming
The
up.
cavalry's coming.
And well, if it's not in the structure, it's going to the
It's
structure.
going there. And if you don't make a decision to take care of it, you might lose every drop of water out of that deck gun and out of that tank. But you know what? You made a heck of a play right out
Yeah,
of the
you
gate.
hit it with some heavy artillery off the bat.
Absolutely. Now, what about that back porch? What if that back porch is going on the second floor? What are our thoughts about opening the deck gun there? I have a pointed opinion about it.
Maybe less effective where the distance,
We're not sharpshooters,
Right.
right?
Right.
The deck gun, I don't know what size tips you guys use, whether it be an 1 3/8, 1.5 to start out, whatever the case may be,
Right.
5, 6, 800,
Right.
whatever it may be. 105 PSI.
Right.
We pull up, that back porch is going, and I get the deck gun in line with that. The wires are in the way. You know we're going to hit the wires with the line, so it's going to spray everything
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
Right.
I don't know how big your tanks are. I think Cambridge, you got about 500.
500.
We're 750.
750, yeah.
I guarantee you, I don't care if you do this every day.
Half of
You're
it's-
probably going to put a good 300 gallons, potentially 250, 300 gallons
On the
in
ground.
the driveway.
Yeah, on the
Now
ground
you've
before
lost
you
your
even-
potential.
Right.
Where
Yeah.
that one right up front, you're going to be good.
Yeah, you know you're gonna.
We had a fire on Highland Street in downtown, right in the middle of COVID, and we pull up, 3-story wood frame, 3rd floor porch is going like crazy, and I had a senior man in charge of the squad, and another guy jumps up. I said, "Let's hit it with the deck gun." I said, "Get it right in position." And the kid that was driving, I looked at him. I said, "You need to get 105 PSI like that, because if you just open this, what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's going to
Blub,
be
Yep.
blub. Now
Yeah.
I've lost that water.
Yeah.
I get it right to pressure. Now I'm at it. And I'm going after it. And now I'm making. Now we grabbed it. It was actually, it already burned into the soffit. It was already in the caulk loft, and we made a good push on it, knocked it down. Good stop. Guys did a hell of a job.
Yep.
I transitioned back to that back porch we were just talking about now, and they had a fire in a 3-story wood frame, back porch just like that. Lieutenant pulls past the building. We have a 2.5 story. We have a 2.5 200-foot pre-connect that comes off the back of all our engine companies. He's the officer on the squad. He orders the 2.5 to be pulled, pulls it down the driveway. They knocked the hell out of that porch fire. What they found was, on the back, the whole back of the soffit was also going. Now
Now it's in.
you're getting 300 gallons a minute potentially out of that 2.5 versus 500, because no one's going to start taking tip sizes.
No.
They're just
Right.
going to hit it, right? 200. He made a hell of a play on that, but he also now could get around the back of the building,
Right.
which he wouldn't have had that opportunity
Ability,
with
yeah.
the deck gun. Now,
Right.
these are food. This is food for thought. Everyone is going to end up with a different
Right.
look at this. But these are the things that, as a guy riding the back step or the guy that's in charge, we promote officers sometimes that aren't. They get a little anxious when they get there. They might not want to hit the deck. I'm going to run out of water. Well, this might be a perfect play. That might be something you can say in his ear. Hey, we hit this hard right now.
Right.
We're going to be good.
Right.
You know what that is? That's blitz attack. That's transitional attack.
Right.
So when we talk about, you and I were talking a little bit about transitional attack prior to us starting here. Been around for a long time.
Yeah.
When I started in the mid 90s, we called it a blitz attack, and then we'd knock it down and bring an 1 3/4 in
Right.
and go and put it out. I think there's a lot of people that want to put their names on covers of books.
Yeah.
If I could write, maybe I'd try it too.
Yeah,
My point is, I wouldn't know what a comma was if I tripped over it. But my point being is, we used to do that stuff a long time ago.
Yeah.
Maybe we got away from it a little bit, so now it's a resurgence. But anyways, to this building, this is a big building. It's split in half. So now, split in half potentially, right? Maybe it's a 6-family. Maybe it's not a 3-family, with using that half story as also, because people use that half story as living space.
Right.
Another big thing to think of, when you
because it's got an AC right in the window.
AC
You know
right in the
they
window.
live-
Oh,
Someone's
yeah.
living up there.
Yep.
Another thing too to think of, when you look at a building like this, if you look at that A side double window, usually that ceiling is going to be about how high? Probably maybe a foot above that or so.
Yep.
How much space does that give you in the attic? big attic space.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
now when you go up to cut a hole in this roof, maybe you can't
Long
get all
pipe
the way to
bowl,
the
yeah.
top. Maybe you have an issue because there's fire blowing out of somewhere. Can you cut that a little bit lower? Or if those windows are real high up to that peak, now we know we got to cut it at the very top.
Right.
Because what are we trying to do? We're theoretically trying to turn this building into a chimney.
Right.
Is what
Right.
we're trying to do. Yeah. So keep that in mind. These are some things. You have more time. Plus, not to mention, you have more time. When it gets in that attic space there's more room for it to build pressure.
Right.
Where in a smaller space, those windows are going to be higher on that peak. Smaller space, it's going to build pressure quicker. When you pull that ceiling, it's going to come down real hard on you. I'm going to move forward here.
Yep.
Can I
yes,
ask you
go
one
ahead.
question about that?
Yes.
So one of the things we like to do on here is talk about, a lot of guys don't have resources like Brockton has, Cambridge has, Stoughton has, people that have mutual aid 10, 15 minutes away sometimes. If you had that back porch just going to it and this just out of curiosity, and you were in a department that was smaller, didn't have mutual aid coming, somebody to tie in, somebody to take that third floor, would a bad play be to take your 1 3/4, hit that, and that way you can actually advance without having to move a 2.5 to a third
Could be.
story floor?
You might show up with one guy. You might not be able to move that 2.5 by yourself.
Right.
Absolutely. And to your point, I'm going to get fully back to that. But teaching, I taught the impact programs for a long time at the Fire Academy. So I got to travel all over, really. I handled like Quincy, west to like Mansfield, even Franklin area, south down to like Mattapoisett, Rochester. Not the Cape, but to the bridges.
Yeah.
So I covered a whole host of departments. Some of the best conversations. I do the class, whatever the class was. Maybe I'm doing a class on dumpster fires.
Yeah.
Who knows what
Right.
it was? That was some of the best conversations I had in the learning that I did after that class was seeing how they handle things. So to your point, which is a very valid point, one of the chiefs down there one day said to me, "What do you think of transitional track?" I said, well, I think there's uses for it here, there, and everywhere. I think, again, I got into the whole blitz attack thing like we just spoke of here. I talked about that a little bit. And when I was talking about it, he says, we can't do it here because we don't have any water. We don't have any backup. And I went, holy shit, you're right. I learned more. I swear to God, I learned more from talking to a guy like him than I'm going to learn from a guy who's been in the, I don't want to say necessary, but a guy in the Bronx for the last 30 years.
Yeah,
because
who rode the same position every day.
Yeah,
and
I can't relate to him as the Brockton Fire Department
Right.
because he's got more staff and he knows what to do with.
Right.
But you learn so much quicker when you talk to people who are going to do more with less. So this chief's telling me this story, and I'm like, wow, you're right. So pulling that 1 3/4, keeping it back. Maybe he's not fighting the main body of fire. Maybe he's got it up at the soffit trying to knock it down, make sure it doesn't get in. Or maybe he knocks down the main body of fire and says, okay, it's going to run in the soffit, but at least I know what's going on.
Right.
I interviewed in a department before I got on Brockton that was hiring paramedics, like I said earlier, and 2 of their engines, they showed up with one guy. And they were expected to stretch the line to the front of the house, charge the line, attempt to get a water feed before the call department got there to be able to do it. That's a Herculean task.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is a Herculean task. If that guy got 4 of those 6 things right, he went way above.
And that's if
Right.
no one's hanging out of the window.
And if
that's
the
if no one's
hydrant's at
hanging
the
out.
driveway.
And if the hydrant's at the driveway.
Right, exactly.
You might
yeah,
be,
yeah.
or what if you don't have a hydrant?
Yeah.
Right.
I went, I'm on the Plymouth County, on the Plymouth Fire Chiefs Association of Plymouth County. We have what's called the Third Alarm Task Force. And when I first took over almost about a year ago, I actually became part of the Plymouth County Chiefs. And I said, what's this third alarm thing? And they said, well, there's 4 chiefs each month, and you go to the fire to help out because, they might not have other command staff there. So I said, so I get to go more fires?
And
And he goes, well, someone has to go to Plymouth County Control. But I said, yeah, but if I don't do the Plymouth County Control thing, I get to go to more fires? And he was like, yes, you can go to more fires.
That was actually a
Sold.
question that I had for you because, I mean, you got to miss like going interior and, and being in that fight,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, if there's a fire like around, especially like everyone that surrounds Brockton, right? I mean, you're pretty much there. So, I mean, you're getting to really study
Other places, other
other
operations.
places, other operations, everything. And then just not even that, just honing in on the
Absolutely.
craft and seeing these things repeatedly and day after day and after day.
But
And
I think there's something
that's
to like
pretty awesome.
when you get when you have a fire and you have the luxury of having multiple chiefs and you can assign somebody to interior. I've never done it, but I feel like one of the things that's really awesome about that is that you can go in and literally just look around. Not literally just look around, but you're taking in how the fire's moving, what's going on, what the crews are doing, and I just feel like you could just gain so much knowledge watching that. Like you
You're
said,
not
like,
forcing a door. You're not trying to stretch a line.
you're
You're
not
looking at
focused
the
on
bigger
your
picture.
task. You're focused on the big picture, and I think that's really cool. But
Yep.
anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. Like I said,
No,
sometimes we have
that's
some
so
of these
true
smaller
because-
departments.
So
and-
I went to recently this was the first month I did it. Actually, was this month, and I went to basically a massive mulch fire south of Brockton, and I think they were in third alarm assignment. They had brush sprayers, they had this, they had that, all these different things, and I went down there, and I checked in with the chief, and I said, "Hey, what do you need me to do?" He says, "I'm going to get another engine. I don't know where we're going to put." I said, "Well, listen, I think if you put an engine down this little side road here, you're going to be able to get the whole back of this pile." That's what I would say. Well, as I'm walking down there waiting for this engine to pull in, I look over, and they have like 4 pools set up. They're drafting out of pools. They got this tanker shuttle, 19-year-old kids driving these big
the tanker
tankers,
shuttle. Yep.
dumping water. I'm like, holy mother of God,
Right.
what an operation.
What an operation,
Right.
yeah.
What an operation. I mean, so to your point, not only about a town that's going to show up maybe 1 or 2 guys on the truck, you know what? I'd hit it as hard as you can. You might not be able to stretch that 2.5. You might not. Maybe the deck gun is your only resort for that back.
Right.
Because maybe you can't get a line back there at all. Who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe
right.
you do have to. Maybe you're not going to be a good shot. Maybe you set yourself up perfect and say, okay, I think I'm aimed okay. Let's go and do it.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe you got to get down because you can't be up there and also running the pump panel. So you got to aim it, then get down and then open that line and charge it. So there's a lot to be said about that. To back to my point about being able to talk to some of these chiefs from other communities, what they have, I consider myself very fortunate. Could I always use more staffing? Absolutely. I don't want any of the city councilors to be watching this thing. Oh, Brian just said he need more guys. No, I need more.
Always take more.
Always take more. But my point is when you look at what they are dealing with and what they and the other part of it too is I don't deal with a lot of mutual aid. I don't we go to a third alarm before we get anybody. There are a lot of communities that's all they deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're dealing with different command staffs. You're dealing with different people you're not used to seeing all the time. Now you have potentially different philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to be said about those things,
right.
and that's a lot to take in that you don't think about. I started realizing that when I became a deputy, and I was the training deputy. I'd go out of town because we send the safety chief out with any company that goes out of town to the fire. And I was like, wow, all these different people, all these different fire departments.
Yep.
Pretty impressive.
Right.
Pretty
Scott
impressive all
Packs
the way.
versus MSA, RIT teams.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that in our
just that one
So
little.
much of that.
Yeah, we talked about that in our operational realities episode.
Yeah.
Basically, not only your operational realities, but those around you and what they're capable of and
Right.
what they're going to bring or what you're going to have to bring to the table.
Absolutely. We just had, I just met with 2 chiefs that touched my community for lunch last week because they also got promoted right around the time I did to chief of department. And they don't have high rises of any kind. They carry high rise packs when they come to Brockton to cover. So we're going to do some inter-department training. We did it when I worked in the training division. And then it kind of died out for a while, but we're going to get back to getting that because there's certain things that, they're going to come to Brockton. They're not going to,
Right.
they're going to need this. They only carry that because of us. So,
Right.
So there's a lot of those things that you really have to kind of keep in mind.
Right.
But this is again. So this is the Delta side. A lot of times too, in these bigger 2.5s or bigger 3-deckers, you're going to see these. You might see 2 doors in the front. The one towards the wall side is always going to probably go up to the next floor up. The inner door is probably going to stay for the first floor. These satellite dishes and stuff. Think about this: getting your aerial in place. Maybe you can't get your stick to the roof. Maybe you're trying to get a ground ladder, roof ladder up there. Remember, these dish people, you buy that equipment, they don't come back and take it down for you.
No.
If you get 5 tenants in the last 5 years in that building, you get 5 dishes up there. Now they're
Right.
all on the way. You guys know this. You see this all the time. So that air conditioner, see that air conditioner in the Alpha side, Talk about flow path issues. If I take that air conditioner out, have I changed potentially the flow path in that room?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I had read about knee wall fire specifically is the danger of taking out that alpha side window, being in that room, because now you are between the vent and the fire.
No question. So you have to think long and hard about that.
Right.
I'm not a big window takeout guy. I never have been. I mean, I think a lot of stuff we do is if the inside guys need to get that window out for whatever reason, that's one thing. But we shouldn't just, you never put a tool in a chief officer to the newest firefighter on the fireground's hands and not give him an order because something's getting broken.
Right.
Right? But talking about the flow path, we go back to taxpayers. And we talked earlier about that when I talked about, so many times someone wants to, hey, we got to get in there. Just take out that glass door.
Sure. Yeah.
Once you take out that glass door, what have we done?
Yeah. You have
Now,
no door control.
We're crawling over glass. We're taking hose lines over shards of glass that may rip our hose lines. We're trying to get it into the building, and we may lose our water supply. Also, I've lost complete control.
Yeah.
Right.
I've lost that control. Let's go to that. Let's go to that cylinder. Let's pop that cylinder. Let's go in with the key. Let's open it and with the key and open it. And now we can close it if we need to.
Yep.
Yeah, use it to your advantage.
Yep.
The time that's burning, that takes you to get that door off is less damaging than the few seconds of that door being gone and it burning.
Absolutely. So go to, if you have an opportunity at some point, and this fire changed their department. I had an opportunity to speak with one of the deputy chiefs from down there, the Charleston 9, the Super Sofa store fire, and what went on there. And there's that famous picture of the stained glass on the front of that store. And I did a big thing on this because we had a couple of taxpayer fires in Brockton. And when I was in the train division, I did a big thing on keeping things intact. And there's that famous picture of a firefighter right in front of that window, and he takes it out. And within, I think, 16 seconds, there is fire blowing because they had trapped fire above the ceilings. Fire is blowing out there, and to the demise of 9 members.
Right. Yeah. There's that other pretty famous video, the guy that takes out the windows.
Backyard?
Yeah, and then you just see it communicate.
Right.
Oh my! Like a raised ranch with an addition. That poor guy. You almost got to feel bad for the guy because that guy knows he's that guy, and it's all over the place. He's like,
At least his name tape wasn't like,
And so think about this.
Yeah.
Think about this. That guy goes around the back, right? You see that fire in the basement. The guy goes around back. He's doing a 360, whatever he's doing, right? I, as the chief, I send a guy in the front door. I say, get to the basement, take that fire out. Now, he takes out that plate glass window in there. Not only did it spread it through the house, what if you're in that stairwell?
Right.
Yeah.
You just put yourself in the chimney. You put yourself in the sights of the gun.
Right.
And now that fire's coming up there, you're going to get crisped. And this is a raised ranch.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think it was a raised ranch house. This is a straightforward platform construction. We should be able to control this. Yeah. This is a nickel and dime. We're going to be back for lunch.
Right.
Now you got guys burned in the stairway.
So it like you said, if you don't give him an order, something's going to get broken. The other thing is if you're not doing something, you feel like you have to be doing something.
Right.
And so when you come up to a scene like this, and I know it happens, it happens to me because, it's like I can't get to enough fires, right, to like really get rid of it yet. But, you get up with the adrenaline and you just want to do something, right? And actually, so Chris O'Reilly, he's a captain now, right?
He's a lieutenant on squad.
He is a lieutenant? Okay, for some reason I thought he got promoted. But
nope.
So Lieutenant
he
O'Reilly
actually says I get the best job in the world. I'll probably never take another promotional exam.
That's what the lieutenants at Stoughton say too.
Yeah, knowing where you want to be is a great thing.
And so he reached out to me, and he sent me an article, about, and the article was called like Things I've Learned as a Senior Man. Mm-hmm. And the big takeaway that I got from it was it was like this it was like a Spanish saying, but it translated as hurry slowly, right? So it's the same thing as slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's one of these things where we show up and we feel like, and this is where I've had a conversation, and you can speak to this, but when we go to academy, right? There's like a stopwatch, right? And they're like, you got to get this done in X amount of time, kind of thing. Not really, but you have to do something efficiently and effectively, and you can't be taken forever. And so one of the things that I had taken away from it was, I need to hurry up and get this stuff done fast. As I, got more comfortable in my job, I realized that you don't
Got to get it done right.
You got to get it done right, and you have to take a second to look around. And it's not that they didn't teach us that there. It's just that even going through paramedic school, right? It's like you got to get this assessment done in under 3 minutes, this and that. So everything's kind of like you get built into this like timed thing where it's like you kind of lose, you kind of get tunnel vision and you lose the big picture.
You
right?
do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but that was the big takeaway.
And it's
anyways,
not
from
good.
that.
I'll be the first one to be a critic of the fire academy in that sense. I think everybody learns differently.
Yes.
You could give me a book. I love Vincent Dunns because it's like easy to read and I get it.
Right.
I'll tell you, I'll never forget this. You guys are civil service departments, so you know when you study for promotion, you have to read certain books. When I studied for, I think it was captain, I had to read a book on management, and it was all based around running a Sonic, the food place.
Yep.
When I finished reading the book, I had no idea any management characteristics that came out of it. But I'll tell you right now, I'd run a damn Sonic like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
Did you franchise after you
I was, you know what? I was ready. I was going into something.
That's
I
right.
just
That's
this is the
around the
Bible.
time the
Are you
first one
secretly
came
the
to
owner of
Massachusetts.
Sonic and
Yeah,
Stoughton?
yeah, you're right. No. But that was my point. Is everybody learns differently.
Yeah.
Right.
And to put famous phrase, deputy. I talked about him earlier. John Cummings, the deputy chief in charge of training division. He says, "There's no running on the fire ground. You move swiftly." And I said, "Okay, Dep." And he goes, "You want to know why?" I go, "No." He goes, "You don't want to trip and fall because that'll interrupt what I'm trying to get done.
Yeah,
But
right.
you look real stupid."
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's. I think slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I can see it a lot of times. You know, I made deputy chief in 2010. So I've been in this realm for 12 years now. And I'll see a newer kid out of drill school. I was that guy.
Yeah. Of course.
I feel like it was just yesterday.
Yep.
My hips and back don't make me feel like it was just
Yeah.
yesterday. But he'll be on the fire ground. He's trying to get a water supply. He's trying to do this. And I'll kind of walk over sometimes because things are somewhat under control.
Yeah.
And I'll say, "Hey, what's the matter?" And he goes, "I'm just trying to get this." Okay, slow down, whatever. And that goes to the, Freddie Eichel's, I think, a lot of the mentoring leadership thing. You've got to let people know that the guy at the top cares as much about that hydrant that is getting made and dressed as you do.
Right.
Because if that doesn't happen, other operations don't happen. So when he knows you care, he might focus more. You might send him into a tailspin. But that's why you use a little humor when you do it. You talk to somebody when you do it. It doesn't have to be done yesterday. You got it. Because if you're trying to hurry, I had a guy one day try to get a steamer cap off a hydrant. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. This is a smart man.
Yeah,
he was righty-tighty and like you wouldn't
righty-loosey.
believe.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yep.
he was caught up in the moment.
That happens all. So we had I talked to, so we had a fire, I think like 2 weeks ago. It was me. So like my captain was out. So me and one of the other guys, we alternate taking the radio, so we both can have like an equal level of experience. And I was talking to a couple of my friends, like it's tough because you lose the ability to like look at the macro, and you're like so hyper focused on trying to do what you're doing well. And the deputy called for us to feed engine 5. So we laid a lot of foreigners. This is a different story. But we laid in, we're going to feed 5. And he handed one of my friends, Chris, who was on the engine with me, he handed me the intake, or handed me the hose, and I was about to put it on the discharge. He's like, "Dude," I'm like, "Oh, yep, sorry," but like you're so like hyper focused on performing the task, and it's like small stuff, and that's why I think you rely on your teammates to we take care of each other. But yeah, that was when you mentioned that was like a good example.
I think one of the things, and this is one of the things I see, and we talked a little bit about chief officers earlier. I've seen it's hard for a fire chief, deputy chief, district chief, battalion chief, whatever you call them, to get out of that realm of being a worker and doing that. The problem is, it's very easy if I walked over and said, "Get that cap off," and rip the cap off and do it myself.
Yeah. Right.
But if I'm doing that, who's doing my job?
Right.
Right.
My job is to make sure we get this big picture taken care of. Training is the component to get this done,
Yeah.
and muscle memory, and,
Right.
and having someone there that's going to say, "Okay, let's get it done. Come on, you got this." If I start doing it, my eyes are off of this.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm not doing necessarily my job. And
Right.
now I'm putting more lives in danger.
Right.
So it's like the officer with the hose line, with the nozzle. An officer doesn't need the nozzle.
No.
The officer should be right behind the guy with the nozzle,
Yeah.
directing him in the direction he's supposed. Because if he's on the nozzle, what's the rest of his crew going to do?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
you
fine.
you maintain the strategic picture, and then you have your company officers to accomplish the
Absolutely.
tactical demands.
Absolutely.
I always say that I often bring up when I got on, I had Buddy O'Neill as my lieutenant, and
Sure.
I always talk about I've gotten a ton of great advice from him,
Mm-hmm.
as well as like my captain, Bill Barkowski,
Bill,
and
I've
but
known Billy since I was 18.
Billy, yeah, me and Billy, Billy's become
Yep.
a really good friend
guy.
of mine.
Yep.
And so I always would tell Buddy because I'd be riding around in the engine with him and stuff, and we'd have conversations, and I'm like Buddy O'Neill, I'm like, you just point to the wall and tell me to run through it, and I'll
Yep.
do whatever you tell me to.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Trust you with my life.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's, and as a young guy, that's what you want to do. You want it because you want to go get that experience, and we've talked about this, where you want to go in and do those things because you don't. It's like, as you know, when you become a paramedic, you work everybody up because you're like, geez, I don't know what's going on here, right? And I
Then you
just want
start
to
to be
check
a little
every
more
box.
finite. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly, and
Can
then you get
tailor
your
your
vision.
approach.
Yes.
You get your
Right.
vision, you tailor your approach, and so that's where I think all of us are now. We're like the send me through the wall guys,
Yep.
Right.
and we're all trying to build that vision so that
Yep.
at some point, if we and we've talked about this too, and you just mentioned it, knowing where you want to be. Maybe
Yep.
you want to be that senior guy.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to be a
some of the
lieutenant.
happiest guys
Yeah.
on the department are the guys that got the spot they wanted and they stayed there and they
Yep.
get really, really good at that job. I mean, that's why senior men are important to
Yeah.
the
It's so
to-
important.
Yeah.
I watching your podcast with Deputy Eichels was awesome to hear how, the importance that was placed on that, because I had a senior man when I was a captain on Ladder 1. The difference between the senior man who's going to be in charge of the company and the senior man who's the real senior man,
Right.
it's the same guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Some of them think they're the senior man only when they're in charge.
Correct.
I had a senior man. This guy, he was on everybody. He was on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It didn't
yeah.
matter who
Yeah.
you were.
Yeah.
But the beauty of that is he understood everything that was going on, knew where it needed to be, and he was that careful watcher from the background to make sure
Right.
all the parts moved the way they were supposed to
Yeah.
move. All those pieces moved perfectly. And we have one now in my old group. The senior man on Squad A he relishes that role,
Right.
wants to do that role, wants to mentor. Mentoring is the key to that
Mm-hmm.
position. Bring that person along. Tell him, again, talk about the stuff that has been talked to him
Mm-hmm. Right.
about, because it's not going to get passed on if we don't
Right.
do it.
Have you read Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink?
I've read part of it. I
if
haven't.
you-
I actually read it on vacation.
Okay.
And I didn't actually finish it.
So maybe you got to it. Just rings a bell when you say it. Maybe you got to the point where he talks about decentralized command.
Yep.
And so that was actually when Freddie was on. We never made it to talk about it, and
Right.
when we had lunch afterwards, he mentioned something, and I said, "Yeah, decentralized command." He goes, "I wanted to talk. We just didn't get to it."
Yeah.
Right.
And it's important to talk about a little bit now, where your senior man being exactly where he needs to be at all times and doing everything. That is decentralized command, like
Oh, yeah.
personified, right there.
Yeah.
That is
Absolutely.
it. That is, him knowing the overall mission, having the training to do so, and taking it upon himself to be there,
No question.
right time, right place, getting everything done,
Yep.
and that's how the mission gets accomplished, right?
Yeah.
So
There's
that's
no question
huge.
about that.
Yeah.
I had a very good senior man when I came on. I've had good senior men throughout my career in the different places I've been, and you don't even like you hold roll call. All right, this week I get this, and everybody be ready to go at 10 o'clock. We're going out drilling on X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Well, I come down a half hour later, and everyone's standing around. What's going on? Don't worry, everything's taken care of. Like I didn't have to think
Right.
Right.
about what everybody and not to get off topic with this, but the leadership thing, where I see, and I've seen over the years, I've seen lieutenants, captains, deputy chiefs fail, is they're trying to manage too many things
Right.
at once, and they're not trusting their people to do their jobs. It is not my job when I arrive at a fire to worry. I turn around and I say, all right, like you said earlier, feed engine 5, whatever the company was. However it gets done, it gets done. It needs to be done. And you need to trust your people to be able to get it done. And if you can't trust them, you have a bigger issue that needs to be handled in training and other aspects.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's on you. That's the buck stops here.
Right.
And if you're not doing that, you're not making sure that's going to happen, then ahead of time, that conversation happens long before you get to the incident.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you've got to trust those people. And you can't.
Right.
The micromanagers are the most difficult. The most difficult. So I would have to tell you, if you're in my position and you have people that are at ranked levels micromanaging below you, see these gray hairs? That'll make you crazy because you know you got good people that are working for those people and they just want to work. And now what happens? What happens? Now those crews don't feel as though they can be trusted by anybody because my first line officer doesn't even think he can trust me. What does the chief think of me?
Right.
You have to pull that person, that captain, that lieutenant, that deputy chief, that chief department, whoever it is, pull them out and say, hey, what are you doing? You get them to a position where they are going to be able to do this on their own. And if they are,
Well,
then
let
what
them
in
do it.
God's green earth are you doing it for?
Right.
You're going to get someone killed,
Right.
And you're going to lose everything with your crew.
Right. Yeah.
So good, very good points.
Yeah.
Very valid.
And I think it's kind of ironic because like they're trying, and you see this in every organization. Like it's not fire service specific. It could be any like high performing team, right? So like they're doing it to try and positively affect the outcome, but it's actually to the detriment of the
Absolutely.
mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I think Freddie talked
Couldn't have
about
hit it
that too
more nail on the head.
when
Absolutely.
we did that episode. Is that exact like, all right, I need a line to the third floor, or I need feed engine 5 or whatever, and then like you said, you just the guy. If you're operating at a fire scene, and you don't have somebody that can show that can do that job, then as you said, there's something wrong.
There's something wrong. We have a bigger problem.
Right.
And Andy Kerrigan will tell you. He's a very good friend of mine. Andy will tell you. I talk about this all the time. And there's a fire we had in Brockton years ago. I was a safety officer, and I had a deputy chief carrying a hose line around a building, and I lost my mind from a safety perspective.
Right.
If he's doing that, who is doing his job?
Right.
And why is his crews not comfortable enough to stretch hose lines? Why does he have to do it?
Right.
Give me a break. It's not. I'm not saying that job's beneath him. He has bigger things he has to worry about.
Right.
His bigger concerns.
There's a reason we have positions
There is.
in the fire service, and
There
because
is. Right.
every one of them is
Yeah.
important.
Stay in your lane. I say
Right.
it all the
Stay in
time.
your lane.
Stay in your
I
lane,
say it
yep.
all the time. Stay in your lane. But
Yep.
I'm sorry. We digress a little. I
Yeah.
apologize.
No,
I knew this
but
was
that's
gonna
like
happen.
digress.
that's what we
This
love
is-
about
My
the
wife
show.
said it. She didn't think I'd be home till
Yeah,
Thursdays.
yeah.
You guys are in for the long haul.
No, but
No.
it's good because it's try to replicate the firehouse table, and that's exactly what happened. You start talking about one thing, and that one thing has so many factors, as you said. The fire service is endless that you can offshoot and talk about all those, and all of those things. Like, so we're doing a episode on 2.5-story wood frames. All of those things make this happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
Sure.
that's important.
So you guys are putting these pictures up, right? So they'll see these
Yep.
pictures.
Yeah.
So
So on YouTube, they'll see him.
perfect.
Yep.
So this is the Florence Street fire. If we want to continue, this is obviously clearly in the structure. You can see this thing puffing from a million different places, and look at that smoke. That smoke. People get into this whole reading smoke thing. There's a valid argument to that, but. What do you think this is? This is all I'm right
big
now.
fire,
That
yeah.
attic space is
Right.
screaming. That half story is screaming, and it's pushing hard. I wish I should have given you a picture that I had of a really good one, Northfield Street. It was actually a fatal fire, but they got a hole in the roof, and you watch this. You could see the smoke coming out horizontally out of the seams of the clapboards, and then all of a sudden the hole went in the roof and all went away.
Wow.
So it's amazing. So this is, you can see this really screaming. It's pushing from the soffits. It's pushing from those rake boards. You can see it right at the peak, so you know it's up in that attic space. So now any movement these guys are having going from that rear stairwell or whatever the case may be to get up into there, they really got to proceed with caution. Now, if this building is split in half and it's a 6-family, we got to proceed in even bigger caution, because now you don't even know, is it over? Is there a wall that goes up between those two? Now you have to prepare that there is not, because you have to think that fire has now come all the way to the back of the building,
Right.
and be prepared for that. And don't put yourself in a position of harm's way to make sure we always put ourselves in a position of harm's way, but put ourselves in a position that when we're opening from a position that's not going to put us unduly in harm's way.
Right.
Again, be at that stairwell, be someplace you can be.
Avenue of egress.
Yeah. There's no alpha side window if there's a wall right through
Nothing.
the middle of that.
Nope.
Yeah, right.
Nope. Stick placement, you know, I'm an advocate. We've done this for a number of years on my department now. We get a couple of houses away. The officer gets out of the truck and walks the ladder in. Stands at the turntable. Remember, it doesn't matter where the front of that truck is. It doesn't matter where the middle of that truck is. The only thing that matters is where that turntable is. And if you can't shoot it from the turntable, you have a great picture in a little while then it doesn't matter. You need to shoot it from the turntable. So a lot of times the officer will get out. He'll walk from the back right around the turntable and watch. Okay, stop. We're going to shoot it here. Sometimes he might be a little off, sometimes not, but at least he's putting it. It's too hard.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in that front passenger seat to try to get to the right spot.
You lose perspective.
Yeah.
All perspective, especially these trucks are so damn big.
Yeah.
You know, so damn big.
In my professional opinion, as an engine guy with zero experience on a ladder.
That's okay. That's okay. You get detailed once in a while,
Yeah.
right?
No.
They don't even let you over.
I don't know if they want me over there.
Yeah,
I'll have to ask ladder one.
Yeah. Another similar picture, again, water supply is key in a structure fire, right? So everybody gets their water supply different. I know Cambridge, everybody's responsible for getting a hydrant, correct? For the most
It's-
part.
Yeah,
It's weird
so
because
like-
in our SOGs, it's actually different, but in practice, it's kind of expected that you get your own. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have recently switched. We used to be 3 and 1 on all struck boxes. We have recently switched to a 4 and 2. This is something I was trying to do for quite a while. Then I get to go in the big seat, and now with the deputies in agreement, we've been able to do that. One of the reasons, my big thing years ago when I was a deputy, when I needed that second ladder, I needed it yesterday.
Right.
And even more importantly now, we also send another engine. So we were going to go from 3 and 1 to 3 and 2. We were actually at 4 and 2. Reason being is we've had 2 Maydays in the last 12 years, and they've all happened within probably the first 3 to 5 minutes.
I was sitting at work and I listened to one of them. Well, the
Till
guy
now.
fell through the
stairs.
floor. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
great.
stairs. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Fell through the stairs, and it was fine. Both of them turned out fine. But one of the things that it showed us is we needed a rig company ASAP,
Immediately.
not just on the working fire.
Right.
Right off the bat.
So that response. So what it's done is it's for the deputy. You know, it's hard sometimes. You're working as a deputy. You know who's coming. You know where they're coming from. You know what the lineup's going to be. Everybody, by the way the box, and I'm sure everybody does this to some extent. The way the box comes out tells you really kind of what your assignment. First engine company is going to be. First engine company is going to be attack. Second engine company is going to try to drop lay away, reverse lay, and put their front suction on the hydrant. Third engine is going to lay in and put their hydrant assist valve from a different direction. RIT company is going to pull up at that hydrant assist valve, be prepared to pump it if needed. RIT company is going to come down the front of the building. First do ladder is going to do search, rescue, and forcible entry. And second do ladder is going to throw the stick, potentially go up both sticks, to cut holes, whatever's need to be done. So we have a plan in place. Now, again, you got to be Tom Brady on the fire ground and call those audibles. And that's the big thing. You know, when we were starting to put this together, a couple of conversations went on amongst the deputies and the acting deputies for the captains going, well, what if this? I said, stop the operation and tell them what you want them to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's your job.
Right.
Change.
You know, it's easy to be the deputy or the chief officer and show up and stand in front of the building and go, yep, everything's going well. That's the easy part. It's when things go sideways and you got to make those calls.
Right.
That's when
Right.
things change.
So is your guys for squad A? It's like I'm kind of familiar. So like on your initial box assignment, does that count as one of your engines, or is that operating as your rescue company?
So it operates as an engine, but the company operates as a rescue company when
Okay.
they arrive. So what we have in place right now, we've never had a heavy rescue. We had the tactical support unit for many years. We've actually just purchased a heavy rescue. We've received it. It's actually going out for lettering the end of this week.
Cool. Very cool.
In 1991, they laid off 32 firefighters in the city of Brockton. We've never gotten one of those companies back, engine company one. So what my proposed plan is moving forward is to show the city, which they're biting on now, that we don't need another engine. We could get a heavy rescue and operate in that
Diversify
sense.
and-
We have
Right.
so many guys taking so many classes on so many forms of technical rescue and different things. Let's look at the big picture. I can get an engine from anywhere. I can't get a heavy rescue.
Specialized.
Right.
I can't get someone specialized. So that's the plan, is to actually get this company in service, hopefully before I retire.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool.
We're hoping. Yeah, we got our fingers crossed. We're heading in the right direction. we'll see what happens. But anyways, to go to the water supply part I talked about. Water supply, I don't know what every department does. What we always try to do is we try to get at least two water supplies on any type of 2.5 or 3 deck, at least two.
Yeah.
And we try to get them from different directions, no dead ends. We have good water in Brockton, certain areas. We have very poor water in other areas. I mean, just like any other city in New England, we have mains that literally they're taking out that are over 100 years old. You got an 8-inch main with incrustation and sedimentation that's brought it down to a 3-4 inch.
Yeah, it's like atherosclerosis.
So my neighbor was the DPW commissioner. He's since retired, but he used to give me pipes. So this is what you were drinking, and give me. What it was awesome was for the drill school to show them, because a lot of times they couldn't comprehend the idea of, well, if it's a 4-inch pipe, it's a 4-inch pipe. If it's an 8-inch pipe, it's an 8-inch pipe. No, you don't understand 100 years of calcification is going to do to you.
Right.
And you bring it in, and they're shocked.
Yeah. Right.
So
this is McDonald's in your heart.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. This is why you're seeing a cardiologist.
Right.
This is why you're taking lipids. But to keep those things in mind. So water supply is key for us in this environment, because I'm a big do not take consecutive hydrants. Don't ever take them on dead end roads. We want to make sure. What I always say to everyone is, we have water maps everywhere there in the CAT system. Know where your big water is.
Right.
I mean, you look at Main Street Brockton, like it's like Main Street USA, right? Main Street Brockton, you get up towards the north side near Home Cafe and like up in the Montello section, and that is a 12-inch main. When you get down the south side, like Italian Kitchen area in Campello, we have a ton of taxpayers down there, and you're down to a 6-inch main that's probably calcified to a 4-inch main.
Wow.
Montello Street, one street over, has a 30-inch main.
Yeah.
Right.
So I always say, we got to get to the big water. Where's the big water? Get
Right.
to the big water. We might not need the big water,
Right.
but we're getting to the big water.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Especially if you have to go defensive and you're running multiple ladder pipes and all this other stuff.
Absolutely.
You lose something for some reason, and now that's the only option you have. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's no question. There's no question. And I think the members kind of know that, I could probably put 3 engines on that hydrant on Montello Street at that 30-inch main, and that's all well and good, but what if something happens with that hydrant?
Right.
I don't want to do that.
No, right.
So here we have a good picture of it actually starting to break through in that attic space. As you can see, it's starting to work its way down. Like I said, it's going to find its path of least resistance. Again, this fire started on the second floor in a room that was being redone, and it spread very quickly into the structure. So again, just like I said before, one of the big things you're going to notice too is you have these outcroppings on the side. You see you have this other peaked roof on what would be the Bravo side here. That's going to have an attic space just like everything else. Is it going to add? It may be connected to the other attic space. It may not. So you may have an actual built-in firewall there that you're not even aware of sometimes. Right. And we've found some of those. Again, starting to burn in the back. Not much to say. I want to see right. This is where they cut the hole, I think, right up there, and they were backing out. And look at how this is lifted now. Look at the difference between these photos, right? What we have humming here, right? Everything pushing out of those sockets.
It just pulls it straight into those.
Yeah.
It's going to follow the path of least resistance. Now you look at this photo here, and you have a good hole, and now everything's pushing. Yeah, is it pushing out that gable end? Absolutely, because that gable end is actually venting that space. Some things to just be aware of in buildings like this. You see more of a flatter roof on the back where it comes down and it flattens out. Remember, if you go up that back set of stairs, like I said, and you're starting to pull from that stairwell, and you pull in the stairway just to give it a peek real quick, that doesn't, you may not have anything. That doesn't mean it's not on the other side of the wall, because it might just be that flat roof.
Right.
One thing about pulling, and I've noticed, I was talking to Deputy Chief Albanese about this the other day, one of our deputies. When I always say, and my thing is, when a company officer, a chief officer, whoever it is, says pull, you pull till they tell you to stop.
Right.
I never go into a room and say, okay, I need just pull back to about here, do this, do it. No, just stop pulling. Because think about your ceilings. Think about your tin ceilings. Think about your lath and plaster. Think about your drop ceilings. You've got to be, you might pull one and go, there's nothing up there. Well, you got 2 more ceilings. Just keep pulling.
You're going back through time.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like a time capsule.
Yeah, really.
But the other part of it too to keep in mind is when you arrive at something like this and you're opening, you might pull here, but if those other bays that are running vertically or horizontally, no matter what they are, with the wall or the ceiling, it might be running in a few bays, and it might be, oh, no, I got nothing. Well, they checked the second floor. Why is it already in the attic?
Yeah, right.
Well, because you didn't pull the right base. So pull that
Right.
whole room. Get
Right.
everything pulled down. And work smarter, not harder, especially on a day like this. We're looking at, heat index is close to 100. We get some serious concerns about rehab. I think Concord last night, I saw six alarms. I'm sure they were at 6 alarms. Maybe in the middle of the spring, it might have been who?
Concord,
Maybe
yeah.
3.
Yeah, so
right.
I looked, I Google mapped, I saw that come in, so I Google mapped the bill because I was like 6 alarms. Hold on, like what do they have going on? And it looked like, at least on Google Maps, like maybe a fairly good sized house, but I imagine that a lot of that was heat related for
good for the
rehab
incident
and
commander saying, hey, these guys are going to be dead.
Right.
I got to bang
Right.
alarms quick.
and that's also, you pointed out before, when you said it earlier, it was funny, that was the first thing that came to my mind, is that might not have been a 6 alarm fire even for rehab for Brockton, but it was for them, and for somebody else it could have been an 8th,
Potentially, yes. Right. Potentially, yep. Every conversation I've had with the deputies every morning in the last week has been just bang them quick.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If usually they'll bang a second. I'll come on the second, and they'll try to wait. They'll let me bang the third. I said, don't wait.
Yeah.
If you need it, bang it.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Even if you don't have a job for them on the fire ground, you're gonna
Stage
need
'em.
them. You're gonna need them for rehab on a
Stage
day
'em.
like.
Was that the picture back? I think it
I
was
think
back
we
one.
might be one out of order. Hold on. Right here?
Yeah, was that the picture you're talking about?
Look at how we shot the roof.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Right?
It's a nice.
So
Wow.
this
Great
is
picture. Great shot.
I don't know who was in charge this day, to be quite honest with you, because I was at a graduation. But
There's only
look at how
one
we
of
shot
them.
the roof. Yep, there's
Yeah.
only one of them. Yep. Look at how we shot the roof. Look at the 35 in the front of the building in case they get jammed up on the second floor. I have to tell you, no one ever wants to be RIT, right? No one wants to be the RIT company, right? We talk about that. You talked about it in the episode you did with Freddie. The greatest thing about the RIT company is the new advent of ground ladders.
Right.
What can the RIT company not do?
Right.
The RIT company can't engage in internal fireground operations. That's the hallmark of RIT.
Right.
But what can they do?
Soften
the building.
Yep.
What's softening the building? I've never seen so many ground ladders thrown in Brockton in my entire career since the RIT initiative took over 10, 12 years ago. Guys are throwing ground ladders just to throw something because they want something to do.
Just because you want something to do. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And just go throw them everywhere.
just
They'll
go
say,
throw 'em.
well, where do you want them? Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's a window, put a ladder.
If there's a window, put a ladder there,
Yeah.
and get every ladder out of every truck here.
Right.
The other big thing too we've been doing recently too with the aide in our department. We have an aide like you guys do. He usually always will stay with the deputy or with the incident commander, whatever's going on. And I never really wanted to super marry him to that board. The accountability board. What's a great job for the RIT company once they get everything laddered? Who's going to have to go find the person? Who has to know where everybody is in that building? That RIT company is near that accountability board regularly.
Ready to go.
And what they're doing, and I'll look over at the officer, we just had a fire a couple of weeks ago in the night. It was guys did a great job, quick knockdown, but he went to a second, and I looked.
Was it a 6 family? Was it that one?
Which one?
I can't. I knew there was a fire a couple weeks ago. I thought it was.
There was one on.
But,
There was one on Hamilton Street the other night. That was a 6 family.
Okay.
Then Deputy Solomon had one the other day as well. That was I think that might have been 6 as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think now.
Okay.
I think they blend together.
Yeah.
after a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
That's a good problem to have. Yeah.
No, well, you start, well, you're thinking about which building it was. Anyways, but my point was, I remember looking over at the lieutenant that was in charge of the RIT company. I said, "Hey, we need to be here, here, and here." And I got a company out of rehab. I look over and go, "Squad A's going to floor 2, ladder 2 is going to the basement. Check for drop down." And all he's doing, they've thrown ground ladders. They've done a number of different things, and he's going to know really better than me, or the crew is going to know better than me when. If someone calls a mayday, we have to go into a different operation. Continue the operation, but go into a more advanced operation. He's going to know where everybody is.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are some
a
things
good
we
idea.
try to really instill. I need the RIT company all in a local spot, but let's have them near that accountability board so they know where everything is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
My former captain, one of the things I really appreciated about him was, like, we got assigned to RIT a couple of times. He's like, RIT is a working assignment.
Yep.
So we would go around. He's like, Barry, come with me. We'll do a 360, see where the vulnerabilities are, start throwing some ground ladders. Even things like removing pieces of fences that are going to like create a hazard and extricating someone, like, hey, should this go south and we need to get a guy out, like, this is going to be a problem for us. Yeah. So I always appreciate it. Like, it kept us actively engaged, but he was looking at the bigger picture and preparing for like identifying some of these vulnerabilities and addressing the problem.
No question.
Yeah.
It's very
I
cool.
think the RIT company can learn a lot about fireground operations too, because remember, they are outside the building, watching the building, seeing what's going on, understanding, watching the incident commander, watching the aide, watching the ladder company. You know, again, you said you've been on an engine company however long. Now you might be outside the building. You're actually watching what that ladder company's doing potentially. All right, why are they cutting the hole there? How's this happening? It's going to bring up questions later on for you potentially to
Exposure.
have a better understanding. I had the same aide for 7 years, and he got promoted to lieutenant. And I knew I was going to be the chief in about a year when the retirement was happening, when the chief was retiring, and I needed someone for a year. But I wasn't going to bring someone in because the guy who's going to take over my group could have gotten rid of him. So I had a guy in my crew who is the senior man on Squad A, who's the salt of the earth. We're friends. He eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff. And he actually came up to me and said, "I'd like to move over with you," and with the caveat that I go back to the squad when you go on. I don't want to stay as the aide.
Right.
I'd like to spend the last year you have on the car with you. And I said, what a great idea. I didn't think of it that way because I didn't think he'd want to.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said, he laughed. He said, "Sully never told me about all that stuff." meaning there's a lot going on out there.
Yeah.
And he's seeing the fire from a different perspective.
Right.
Now you move forward. Now when he wasn't the senior man on the squad when that happened. Now he is, and he has a whole different perspective.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like
Very
you're
cool.
saying, you're looking at it from having the radio, like you guys say. You're looking at the building from a different perspective. So he had the opportunity to be with me for a year. I talk about this stuff when we're driving around the car. We're looking at buildings where I pull in Eddie Morrissey. I'm out on the road all the time. That was Eddie's famous thing. Who knows what town he was in?
Yeah, he was out all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He never came back.
Yeah. Didn't know where, but he was there.
He was out there. He was working.
Right.
But the same thing. We would go around and we would look at a number of different things and talk about a number of different things. And I hope it helped his perspective now as the senior man.
Right.
This is getting along later on in the fire. They had it knocked down pretty good. Again, 3 ladders. I love anytime there's a stick to the roof. I love it. You know, I came on the Brockton Fire Department when they were just coming out of the layoffs.
Yep.
We had companies still out of commission. The ladders were sometimes acting as engines because we had broken trucks.
Sure.
So now, 25 years later, after I got on the job, I see 3 sticks to the roof at a 2.5-story wood frame's a good feeling, because when I came on, we weren't in that spot. Chief Kenneth Galligan did a great job of rebuilding that. Richie Francis after him, and so on and so on.
It's a picture that shows progress.
It shows progress.
Yeah.
One
absolutely.
thing that this picture really shows, and I wanted to point out, was, and I mean, it just goes to show where you said that you have the officer on scene, like bringing these trucks in, because in some of these small departments, right, we all have to like work on our truck placement, and it's like you get out of the truck and you're like, I hope this is good enough. That can be it,
Yep.
And you don't want to take up too much room. You want to be in the right spot. In this picture, it's hard to see because the ladders are blocking it, but from other angles of the photos before, in this picture, you have 3 full-size ladder trucks, and then you have 2 engines. You have Squad A and Engine 5, I think.
In a tight spot.
In a tight spot.
And every
I mean,
one of
that
those
is-
has
that is 10 pounds of
access.
shit in a 5-pound bag
Yep.
right there.
Yep.
Like perfectly
Ready to roll.
Yeah, packed
It's
in
awesome.
nice.
Yeah. Listen, if that outrigger, you see the ladder that's in front of ladder 4 there, if that outrigger is this far from the front bumper of ladder 4, who cares?
Yeah.
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah.
As long as it's there.
Right.
Because
Right.
he needed that spot to get there. And who
Right.
cares where the cab is?
Right.
Who cares where whatever is? As long as you can get there. The
turntable,
You can shoot
yeah.
it from the turntable. That's all that matters.
And you got 3 sides of the building that you could move a stick to
Absolutely.
pretty much any
Yep.
spot on the roof or
Yep.
any window.